If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 266 Lance's Analysis, Battle Frontier. If he's being completely honest with himself, if he ran into this thing in real life, he'd have absolutely zero chance of fighting back. He replayed the footage over and over, combining it with the flood of comments exploding across the screen. Lance forced himself to analyze the terrifying power this unknown enemy had just displayed. First, its species. This was absolutely a Pokémon nobody had ever seen before. Pure white body, elongated humanoid shape, dragging what looked like a seriously powerful tail, its surface seemingly covered with some kind of mechanical parts. As for its attacks, Lance stared hard at those lights that erupted in an instant, trying to identify the moves. Heavy-hitting psychic and ghost-type abilities combined with that appearance. Was this a ghost and psychic dual-type Pokémon? Or maybe, pure psychic type? What made his skin crawl most was that Phantom Force move. The thing could actually ignore Protect. The first phase made it vanish from the battlefield, the second phase's attack phased right through all defenses like a ghost and took down Altaria directly. As a champion, Lance knew full well that if the gap between the Protect user and the attacker was too wide, the move's protection would shatter. That was normal. Protect was never all-powerful and couldn't overcome a massive level difference. Though it worked that way in the game, that unusual battle he'd just experienced felt way more like reality. More importantly, the Protect barrier wasn't shattered at all, it was completely bypassed. Those were two totally different things. That aside, its speed, attack power, and defense were obviously all through the roof. The replay didn't show any level indicator, just gave off this sense of unfathomable strength. As for this thing's behavior, actively blowing up the champion hall's roof to break in, clearly targeting him as champion. And it seemed to have really strong self-awareness. Those cold, dismissive words kept echoing in his ears. Insignificant power, not worth a single blow, test qualifications. As a Pokémon, it showed high intelligence and obvious hostility. Lance abruptly closed the replay. No, if a Pokémon like this had shown up in the game, he couldn't just ignore it. Though the audience definitely didn't know that something like this would likely appear in reality, or rather, definitely would. Right now, he addressed the chat scrolling across his stream. Everyone, you saw it. That thing just now is a type of Pokémon we've never seen before. Its power. I'm guessing it might be a legendary Pokémon. He paused, then continued. Does anyone have any ideas about what this thing might be? The stream instantly went wild again, chat flooding with all kinds of theories. Mythical? New legendary? Is it a glitch? Definitely special story content. Clearly, nothing useful. Lance watched the chat, suddenly thinking of something. He immediately opened his private messages, quickly found Cynthia's name, and sent a message so urgent it practically jumped off the screen. Cynthia, I'm also in the second playthrough now, but I just got attacked in the champion hall. Some kind of white humanoid Pokémon I've never seen before. It literally blew up the roof and broke in, instantly wiped my entire team. It has a move called Phantom Force that can ignore Protect, and its stats are crazy high. Have you seen anything like it in the game? Or heard of it? Right then, on Cynthia's end, she'd just controlled her character to walk through Steven's mineral-scented villa door, planning to go back and carefully search for anything else useful, when Lance's message notification rang insistently. She clicked it open, her brow immediately furrowing, a flash of surprise in her golden eyes. White, humanoid? Ignores Protect and wiped your entire team. She knew Lance's battle skills well. Even in-game, if he could clear the first playthrough, his team's level should be similar to hers. She immediately stopped walking and fell into thought. Wait. I've also seen a similar Pokémon in the game once. She quickly replied, trying to grasp that hazy memory fragment. That was late in the first playthrough, passing through some remote fork deep in a cave. A white shadow just flashed by in the darkness above. It looked really unusual, made a strong impression on me, but it didn't attack and disappeared right away. Lance's instant reply. If that's the case, what we ran into should be the same Pokémon, except it seems like it didn't attack you, right? Cynthia looked at the message and nodded. Yeah, different. I'm guessing this is most likely a branching event unique to the second playthrough, or special story content triggered based on player behavior. There have been unusual story branches before, but they usually don't vary much, which also means I should encounter this Pokémon you mentioned. If I run into it later, I'll let you know right away. Okay, you know what I'm really worried about here. Lance said. Cynthia was silent for several seconds. I know what you mean. For now, let's focus on getting stronger through the game. Ending the call with Lance, a sense of urgency welled up inside her. Cynthia took a deep breath, facing her stream camera, her voice more serious than usual. Everyone heard that Lance got hit by some mysterious powerful enemy in a direct assault. Looks like a white Pokémon? Seems like the second playthrough's difficulty won't be easy. We need to get stronger fast too. She pulled up the map without hesitation. Clear goal, the battle frontier. Let's go. At the same time, chat immediately flooded with support and excitement. Feel bad for Lance, hahaha. What white Pokémon? Anyone got recordings? Streamer, stay strong. If it shows up, beat it down. The frontier should be the place to power up, right? Champion doing special training in-game, lol. After locating it on the map, Cynthia quickly arrived at the battle frontier in southern Hone. What greeted her was a massive complex of buildings full of futuristic tech aesthetics, various unusual facilities reflecting metallic gleams in the sunlight. The founder, Scott, that sunglasses wearing, enthusiastically grinning, was already waiting at the entrance. Welcome, champion. This is the battle frontier, the ultimate battle sanctuary that goes beyond gyms. He spread his arms, voice full of pride, continuing his introduction. 7 major battle facilities, each with its own twist. Singles, doubles, roulette battles, totally different rules, packed with challenges. At the top of each facility sits a frontier brain of exceptional skill. Beat them, and you'll not only earn the frontier symbol representing glory, but also have a chance to win extremely rare rewards. Are you ready, champion? Under Scott's enthusiastic guidance, Cynthia first approached a facility shaped like a giant gear. This is the Battle Factory, featuring doubles battles. The rules are pretty straightforward, a good place to start. Scott explained. Cynthia ended the dialogue and walked in. Doubles weren't anything new to her. The interior space was open, a standard doubles battlefield. Her first opponent quickly appeared on the other side, a little boy wearing a straw hat, looking only 7 or 8 years old, face showing an innocent smile. Chat immediately relaxed. Holy crap, a little kid. This is a freebie. Streamer, go easy on him. The frontier has beginner protection. Should be like a tutorial, right? Cynthia looked at the opponent's young appearance, her tense nerves relaxing slightly, deciding to wrap up the battle quickly. Quick match then. The thought flashed through Cynthia's mind as her fingers controlled the mouse with a light click, sending out her opening combo. Ludicolo, Pelipper. Get ready. Ludicolo with its swift swim ability and Pelipper with its drizzle ability immediately appeared on the field. In a doubles battle situation, this was currently one of her team's strongest partnerships. Using Pelipper's ability to trigger rain, letting Ludicolo gain doubled speed in the rain for high-speed offensive pressure. Chat instantly lit up. Here it comes, the streamer mentioned this. What's it called? Rain team. Right. Using a weather team against a little kid. Champion being thorough. JPG. Isn't this kinda overkill, lol. In-game, the little boy looked at the 2 Pokémon Cynthia sent out, grinned, flashing a smile. Yet his eyes inexplicably lit up. Wow! You're a champion, miss? That's so cool. Then I'll give it my all too. Go, partners! He forcefully threw 2 Pokeballs. Red light flashed, and 2 incredibly imposing figures crashed onto the field. On the left was a majestic presence like a flame lion king, golden mane like a blazing sun, entire body radiating scorching heat and regal aura. Boy sent out Entei LV80. On the right, amid roaring steam, massive cannon barrels like a fortress, blue body containing explosive power. Boy sent out Volcanion LV80. The air seemed to freeze. The smile on Cynthia's face instantly stiffened. She almost thought she was hallucinating. The one on the left, isn't that Entei? This legendary Pokémon, she'd only learned about it through Iono's stream. As for the one on the right, no matter how you looked at it, it didn't seem like a normal Pokémon, right? The stream was like a bomb had been dropped in it, chat completely exploding. Entei. Wait, dude. Does your family sell legendary Pokémon wholesale? Streamer run. However, the battle interface had already popped up, intense music playing, battle starting. Pelipper's drizzle ability activated. Dark clouds instantly gathered above the field, fat raindrops pattering down, weather changing to heavy rain. This was the core of Cynthia's strategy. However, the opposing Entei let out a deafening roar, the flame crown on its forehead bursting with blinding light. Entei's ability, special, drought activated. An even more overwhelming, practically solar scorching energy shot skyward, instantly dispersing the just formed clouds, merciless burning sunlight baking the field. Weather reversed to harsh sunlight. Oh no! Cynthia's heart jumped. With the rain stolen, Ludicolo's speed advantage was gone. Almost the instant the weather reversed, Volcanion's massive cannon had already aimed at Ludicolo on the other end of the field. The cannon's muzzle frantically gathered scorching white light, compressing terrifying energy. It let out a deep rumble. Volcanion used Fire Blast. An incredibly thick, scalding steam-wrapped devastating flame, like an enraged dragon, tore through the air and viciously slammed into Ludicolo. That Pokémon called Volcanion's offensive power also seemed to be abnormally strong. With the sun's boost, this blast of flame actually one-shot Ludicolo. Right after, Pelipper used Surf and successfully hit both opposing Pokémon. Entei, as a Fire-type Pokémon, should take super effective damage from Water-type moves, but under sunny weather plus the level gap, this Surf move only took down 2/3 of Entei's HP. Even more concerning, that Volcanion clearly used Fire-type moves, yet when Surf hit it, no super effective notification popped up. At the same time, bathing in the scorching sunlight, Entei's entire body erupted with flames, golden red light so bright you couldn't keep your eyes open. It opened its massive jaws, and another enormous character-shaped flame burning with sun-core intensity, carrying world-ending force, roared toward the isolated Pelipper. Even with reduced effectiveness, a full 2/3 of HP vanished. Just a few seconds into the battle, the entire team was in critical condition. As the new turn began, Pelipper was also unsurprisingly taken out directly. As the battle ended, Cynthia stared blankly at her suddenly empty side of the field, then looked at the opposing two Pokémon radiating terrifying pressure, and the Straw Hat Boy's smile. The corner of her mouth couldn't help but twitch slightly. "You're sure this is a kid?" The stream also exploded as usual. "Where's my Ludicolo? One shot? Why can the opponent steal weather with an ability? This Volcanion's damage is insane. The frontier is too scary, streamer, let's go home." Legendary Boy OP, screaming. Champion wipeout. Complete screen flood, so packed you could barely see anything. The battle end notification sounded, and only then did Scott casually walk over from the side. "Oh my, sorry, champion. My bad, I forgot to explain beforehand." He spread his hands. The battle frontier, well, to increase the challenge's fun and unpredictability, sometimes throws in some really special NPC trainers. This little guy is one of them. His Pokémon's strength is pretty unusual. He heavily emphasized the word unusual. "Please don't get discouraged, this is exactly the frontier's charm. Please keep challenging." Cynthia looked at Scott's smiling face, then at the little boy who had recalled Entei and Volcanion and was bouncing away, feeling completely speechless. "Unusual? You call this unusual?" Chapter 267 Continuing exploration of the battle frontier, Kairos departs. Cynthia opened her mouth but said nothing. Meanwhile, Lance controlled his Charizard through the high-level zones deep within Victory Road, pushing through battle after battle necessary but tedious grinding. Charizard wiped out a flock of Skarmory with a single flamethrower. The experience points trickled in slowly. Lance's frustration wouldn't fade. He couldn't shake the image of that white demon or those words, testing qualification. Since becoming Kanto's champion, this was the first time he'd felt this way. The worst part? He had to admit he couldn't beat his opponent, and it wasn't even a trainer. It was a Pokémon. A Pokémon that challenged him directly, then dismissed him as weak. The whole situation felt ridiculous. A message notification from Cynthia appeared. He opened it. The content was brief. First battle at the battle frontier. Got swept by some kid using Entei paired with a Pokémon called Volcanion in doubles. They stole my weather right at the start, then one-shot me. Second playthrough, waters run deep. Solidarity. The corner of Lance's mouth twitched. He wasn't the only one getting schooled by powerful enemies. He'd thought Cynthia could at least avoid facing that white demon for now. Apparently, her situation wasn't much better. Misery loves company. Suddenly, his own struggle seemed less unbearable. A strange sense of connection eased the frustration weighing on his heart. He stopped grinding, returned to a safe area, and started his live stream. The chat was still discussing how he'd been one shot earlier. Lance cleared his throat. Breaking news. Champion Cynthia also ran into a problem in her first Battle Frontier match. He kept his tone neutral. She got one shot by some harmless-looking kid using Entei and another suspected legendary Pokémon. The weather was stolen right at the start. Then she got swept in the doubles match. He described what had happened. The chat exploded. There's a Battle Frontier. Damn, if I'd known there was entertainment like this, I wouldn't be watching stream grinding. Feel like I missed out big time. Feel bad for Cynthia for 1 second. Is Lance feeling better now? Second playthrough really is full of monsters. Lance glanced at the chat and nodded. Looks like everyone's catching on. The difficulty of the second playthrough is way more intense than the first. His tone shifted. His gaze sharpened. But more importantly, there's the intel Cynthia provided, plus my own encounter. About that humanoid Pokémon I've got some new theories. He pulled up a key screenshot from his previous battle replay. The image showed a blurry but overwhelming white figure. It's active in the Hone region. Its behavior doesn't seem fixed. When Cynthia encountered it, the creature just observed for a bit, then left. But with me, it challenged me directly and dismissed me as weak. Mentioning this made Lance's mouth twitch again. He analyzed the differences between the two encounters. I still don't know why it chose to challenge me instead of Cynthia. Maybe when Cynthia met it, she hadn't become champion in the game yet. Maybe it only wants to challenge the strong. Lance closed the screenshot. His brow furrowed as he continued thinking aloud. One thing's certain, fighting it head-on won't work. Its power level is all question marks. I need another method. He faced the camera, organizing his thoughts. The main goal is to find a way to resist or avoid its psychic and ghost type attacks. Dark types are immune to psychic attacks. Ghost types are immune to normal and fighting attacks. Steel types have good resistance to both. I need to expand my team for the second playthrough anyway. These types might be good directions to explore. He paused. Or find a way to be faster. End the battle or control it before it can attack. But battles with it seem to happen in real time, not the normal turn-based system in the game. That means being faster will be even harder. He shook his head, dismissing the idea. Anyone have Pokémon recommendations? The chat discussed heatedly. Dark type. Get a Tyranitar. Steel type's also good. Agran. Speed? Is there any Pokémon faster than it? Feel like defensive tanks are more reliable. Items seem questionable. These skills seem beyond the rules. Lance looked at the suggestions without making an immediate decision. These were all preliminary ideas. Right now, the most important thing was raising his basic strength. Level, moves, items all essential. His fighting spirit returned. The grinding couldn't stop. He still needed to explore places that might hide powerful items or clues. As for that white creature, he hoped it wouldn't come testing again before he was ready. He really couldn't handle it yet. With this thought, he controlled Charizard and charged toward the more dangerous areas deep in Victory Road. Inside the battle factory, Cynthia stared at the battle-failed message on screen. She looked at her own empty field, then at the little boy bouncing away across from her. She remained silent for several seconds. The live stream was full of comforting messages. Don't cry. Get them back next time. She let out a gentle breath and showed the camera a bitter smile, helpless and self-mocking. Taking opponents lightly was a critical mistake. In the second playthrough, no opponent could be underestimated. The battle frontier was indeed a challenging place. She acknowledged her mistake. A champion's pride meant she wouldn't make excuses, but this lesson reminded her exactly what kind of game she was playing. Ahata's phrase "forgot to mention" also made her realize something. The rules of the battle frontier weren't as simple as the introduction suggested. She walked to the battle factory's rest area. Instead of starting the next match immediately, she carefully studied the facility rules posted on the wall. She went through the battle factory's doubles rules point by point, not missing any detail that might affect the outcome. She also approached the NPC staff and other trainers waiting to challenge. She pressed the interaction button. "Excuse me, in this battle factory, besides that child just now, are there any other particularly special opponents? What are the features of their Pokémon or tactics?" She got some answers from these NPCs and learned a few things about the battle frontier. Special NPC characters like that one didn't appear every time they refreshed randomly with a probability rate. Once Cynthia could defeat them, the rewards would be much richer. Risk and opportunity went hand in hand. The core of this defeat was that her weather had been stolen instantly. She began thinking about the problems with her rain team tactics in a doubles environment. Even if the opponent wasn't a legendary, what if they also had ways to change weather? Like a Hippowdon with sandstorm or an Abamasno with snow. Wouldn't her core tactics have the same problems? She needed a more stable defensive system. Perhaps adding a Pokémon that could provide light screen or reflect, like Starmie? If weather was stolen, it could still set up barriers at the start, buying time for later moves. Or prepare a counter-weather backup like bringing another weather-setting Pokémon herself, or carrying moves that could eliminate weather. Her mind raced. Though she'd suffered a crushing defeat, Cynthia still had confidence in her main team. Ludicolo, Swampert, these were all partners she'd carefully trained throughout her journey. They weren't inferior to those two Pokémon. The problem was her tactical choices and careless attitude, not her partners being weak. She decided to continue using this team but had to completely change her attitude of not caring just because opponents looked weak. After regrouping, Cynthia stepped into the Battle Factory's battle entrance again. This time, her matched opponent was a middle-aged man in mountaineering gear who looked calm. The chat also got serious. This should be normal, right? You got this. Steady and methodical. Cynthia's gaze was focused. This time, there wasn't the slightest trace of carelessness. Her starting lineup was no longer the rain team seeking extreme offense. Instead, she chose Swampert with excellent durability and wide coverage, plus Victini who could provide defensive support. The battle began. Cynthia's commands were clear and steady. Victini, light screen. Swampert, protect. Establish defenses first. Light flowed around Victini as a transparent energy wall rose in their half of the field. This greatly reduced the damage from the opponent's two Pokémon's special attack moves in the first round. Swampert successfully blocked the opponent's attack with Protect. Next, Cynthia fully utilized the light screen's duration and Swampert's durability advantage. Swampert, Earthquake. Victini, Flamethrower. This time, she no longer rushed for quick results. She proceeded steadily, using light screen to wear down the opponent's HP and moves. She seized opportunities from their mistakes to expand her advantage. Before light screen faded, Swampert's powerful Ice Punch finished off the opponent's last Pokémon. Victory arrived. Though not particularly fast, the pace had been firmly in her control throughout. The chat erupted in cheers. Beautiful. This is the strength of our champion. Check the rewards. In Cerulean City, Kairos looked at the dark red system notification slowly fading before him. SS rank mission. This grade didn't sound simple. Ghost World turmoil. Jengar and Chandelure's homeland was about to have major problems. He should check it out. He turned to look at Jengar huddled in the corner. Those crimson eyes still carried unease, occasionally glancing at the dark overcast sky outside the window. This weather change and Jengar's strange behavior were clearly warnings brought by this Ghost World incident. Jengar. He walked to Jengar's side and crouched down to pat its head. Want to go back to your homeland with me? Jengar's head shot up. Its crimson eyes were full of disbelief. It extended a claw, pointing at itself, then at Kairos, finally toward the gloomy sky outside representing the Ghost World's direction. A confused sound came from its throat. Boss, for real? That place obviously has something wrong with it right now, and you still want to go there? What's there to fear? Wasn't that other place more dangerous than the Ghost World before? Kairos shrugged. Let's go see what's wrong with your home. And while we're at it, see if there's a way to solve this problem. He didn't mention the mission. Jengar probably wouldn't understand anyway. At these words, Jengar seemed conflicted. Its expression became complex. It had indeed been away from the Ghost World for quite a long time. To say it didn't want to go back and look would be a lie. After all, it had grown up in that place. But right now, that uneasy feeling in its heart was warning it not to return. It glanced at Kairos's expression and finally let out a deep sigh and nodded. Whatever. Going back it is. It couldn't keep feeling this awful anyway. Kairos smiled, then looked toward the living room. We're heading out, Chandelure. Almost instantly, in the shadows of the living room corner, ghostly blue flames silently lit up. Chandelure's body composed of black candlesticks and ghostly blue flames quietly materialized. "We're going to the ghost world. Coming with us?" Kairos asked directly. Chandelure's candlelight immediately flickered more intensely, as if expressing excitement. Its cold flame eyes turned toward Jengar, then toward Kairos. Several clusters of flame bobbed up and down. Its attitude couldn't be clearer. Compared to Jengar, it seemed to have no major reaction to this ghost world incident. Now hearing about returning to its homeland, it actually seemed happy. "All right, then it's settled." Kairos made the decision. Bringing these two ghost world natives along would at least save a lot of trouble with navigation and communication. But a new problem appeared. Where was the ghost world? His knowledge of the ghost world was limited to Jengar and Chandelure's origins, plus some scattered information he'd seen online. He immediately returned to his study, turned on the computer, and started searching. Keywords: Ghost World Entrance, how to enter the Ghost World. All sorts of information popped up. Filtering out the obviously unreliable content, Kairos finally found some relatively credible official or semi-official information. Putting it all together, he understood several key points. First, the Ghost World didn't have just one entrance. Passages existed all over the world. Second, entering the Ghost World required a permit. This permit immediately caught Kairos's attention. He clicked the related link and discovered this was a type of access permit issued by a special space management bureau under the Pokémon League. The application conditions were extremely harsh, requiring detailed background checks, strength certification, special guarantees, and often a clear and legitimate reason for entry. The approval process was even longer, reportedly taking at least a year and a half. This made things somewhat troublesome. Chapter 268: Lance and Cynthia's New Discoveries. After her first victory, Cynthia left the battle factory. She wanted to experience the different facilities across the battle frontier and sharpen her skills. Next, she chose the battle roulette, a structure shaped like a giant spinning wheel. The roulette rules were complicated. A massive wheel stood in the center of the arena, spinning randomly each turn and pointing to different effect zones. The variables could change everything in an instant. Cynthia listened carefully to the explanation. Excitement built inside her as she began her first battle. The wheel landed on fire-type moves prohibited. Her Victini went quiet. But Cynthia didn't panic. Victini had other moves beyond fire types. The restriction wasn't devastating. The roulette effects caused problems throughout the match. Still, Cynthia relied on sharp judgment and flexible strategy. She claimed a narrow but decisive victory. She earned victory points and basic rewards, a water stone and the trademark double team. Chat comments flooded in. GG. The streamer adapts so well. What other random options does the roulette have? Curious. After winning several roulette matches, Cynthia returned to the battle factory. She had accumulated battle points and felt ready for a real challenge. This time, her target was the Frontier Brain. The factory's brain specialized in Steel-type Pokémon. Cynthia studied the opponent's common team members. She combined her knowledge of doubles rules with her defensive strategy, developing new tactics. Defeating this brain would earn her the symbol representing factory conquest, plus generous rewards. But she didn't know how strong the opponent would be. If they used two legendary Pokémon, she'd need thorough preparation. Meanwhile, Lance continued grinding deep within Victory Road. Inside a cave where magma churned, the temperature was brutal. His Dragonite roared as thick lightning bolts struck a group of Magmar, and they fell instantly. The experience bar crept upward. Lance had discovered something valuable: monster groups spawned in Victory Road's depths. They provided far more experience than individual encounters. Lance is so committed to grinding, it's been almost half an hour. Experience pouring in, good spot, noted. Thunderbolt's area effect is really strong. But Lance's mind wasn't only on grinding. While exploring a remote branch, he triggered a hidden cave entrance. No treasure waited inside, only a crumbling stone monument carved with faded text. He moved closer. Text interpretation appeared on screen. Space, unstable ripples, ancient rifts, devour. Lance's eyes sharpened. Space rifts? Unstable? Could this relate to ultra wormholes? The monument offered no additional information. Lance turned and left. As he continued exploring, he reached the foggy graveyard area atop Mt. Pyre. After defeating ghost-type Pokémon, he discovered a quick claw in an ancient stone niche. Lance examined it. This item could increase priority move triggers. Maybe he could get the first strike against that white creature. He shook his head. That thing's speed was ridiculous. This small boost wouldn't help. After all, in non-turn-based combat, who knew what effect the quick claw would have? When challenging a high-level Claydol deep in the Sky Pillar, he barely won. His reward was a mental herb. Lance studied the item. It could remove one mental control effect. If that Pokémon had control moves, this might help. Against pure psychic damage, probably useless. He put it away. Better than nothing. He kept part of his attention on the chat, hoping to catch information about that mysterious Pokémon. Back at the battle factory, Cynthia entered the Frontier Brains battle room. The grueling doubles match began. The opponent led with Skarmory and Scizor. The strategy was clear: use Steel-type's extreme defense to limit her damage output, then let Scizor's offense eliminate her team. Cynthia was prepared. She led with Swampert and Victini, both held massive advantages against Steel types. Victini's fire typing was especially deadly to Scizor. She handled the battle easily. Her team had gained considerable levels in previous battles, which helped significantly. The opponent's level 80 Pokémon would have been much harder otherwise. A system notification appeared. Obtained knowledge symbol. Obtained BP reward. Obtained trademark earthquake. She won. Cynthia is awesome. First Frontier Brain kill. Cynthia taught earthquake to Swampert immediately. The Pokémon glowed briefly and mastered the move. She continued challenging other facilities. The content wasn't limited to 2 Pokémon anymore. At the battle tower, she faced a veteran using a Sandstorm team. The opponent led with Tyranitar setting up Sandstorm, paired with Excadrill and Skarmory. The tactics surprised even Cynthia. She relied on type advantages and multiple attempts to claim a narrow victory. The battle points and item rewards were substantial, proving her adaptability against different strategies. While resting at the Pokémon Center in Moss Deep City, Lance overheard 2 trainers chatting nearby. "Hey, did you hear? The Space Center has been detecting strange signal fluctuations recently." "Yeah, the researchers are confused. They say it's like some kind of spatial interference. The parameters resemble what ancient documents call interdimensional rifts." Interdimensional rifts? Sounds scary. You don't think Team Rocket is up to something again? People all over Hone have been seeing Team Rocket members acting suspicious. Lance's ears perked up. Spatial interference? Interdimensional rifts? Ancient documents? And Team Rocket was mentioned. Could Ultra Wormholes connect to Team Rocket somehow? Lance recorded the conversation and sent it to Cynthia as a private message. When Cynthia reported to Scott with her knowledge symbol, he congratulated her. Then he added something curious. "Well done, champion. The Battle Frontier's purpose isn't merely to provide challenges, you know." He adjusted his sunglasses, and light reflected off the lenses. "The League has invested enormously here. There are deeper considerations. The Hone region harbors many ancient energies, some from outside. Spatial fluctuations are one of our key monitoring targets. Your strength and insight may prove very helpful in the future." Cynthia caught the key information immediately: spatial fluctuations and monitoring. This pointed to Ultra Wormholes. Scott, or rather the League, might possess more intelligence than what was revealed at the Movili conference. As Cynthia challenged the battle pyramid, a chat comment drifted by. "Just came from Lance's stream. Did you guys notice? Several cities on his end have seen Team Rocket NPCs wandering around, Route 110, Mt. Pyre entrance. Why aren't they in Kanto or Johto? What are they doing in Hone?" Meanwhile, in the Kanto region. A year and a half. Kairos stared at the information before him. His mouth twitched. By the time the application came through, the opportunity would be gone. He continued searching but found no method to bypass the permit requirement. Just as he was about to give up, a forum post caught his eye: several shortcuts for legally entering the ghost world. He clicked it. The poster seemed to be an experienced explorer. The post detailed several methods for entering the ghost world within legal frameworks. The simplest and most direct was to register as a bounty hunter, then accept a commission involving the ghost world. The explanation was clear. Many tasks involving the Ghost World were commissioned by officials or major organizations to the Bounty Hunter Guild. When executing such tasks, the guild provided temporary permits that expired upon completion. Bounty Hunter. Kairos's eyes lit up. This route seemed feasible. He searched for Kanto Region Bounty Hunter Guild. The map showed the nearest branch to Cerulean City was in Saffron City. Even better, according to the information he'd found, Saffron City had a stable and relatively accessible Ghost World entrance. His objective became clear: go to Saffron City, register as a bounty hunter, then accept a task to the Ghost World and slip in. Decision made. Kairos shut down his computer and stood to stretch. He looked at the overcast sky outside. A strange feeling arose in his heart. How long had he been in this world? He'd been holed up in this Cerulean City villa making games the whole time. Dark Phantom, Rescue Team, Emerald, the outside Pokémon world, the vast continents shown in the anime, the wonderful cities, the diverse trainers and Pokémon, he hadn't seen any of it with his own eyes yet. His first real outing would be for a task. How unexpected. Kairos shrugged. Once he finished his current projects, he'd explore. He'd see all of Kanto, no, the entire Pokémon world. Otherwise, coming to this world would be a waste. But first, he needed to solve the transportation problem. Cerulean City to Saffron City wasn't particularly far on the map. Still, traveling on foot or by ordinary transportation would take considerable time. The solution was easy. He logged into a reputable Pokémon transportation rental platform. Time was pressing, and he wasn't short on money. Kairos selected the most premium service, Dragonite Express, direct one-way trip, ultra-speed tier. Less than 10 minutes after payment confirmation, a deep, powerful sound of beating wings approached from above the villa. Kairos walked outside with Gengar and Chandelure. He looked up and saw a sturdy Dragonite with orange-yellow scales descending onto the front lawn. Despite the overcast sky, its scales gleamed. This Dragonite looked strong. Its eyes conveyed a certain honest nature. After landing, it scratched its belly with a claw. A soft rumble came from its throat. Kairos recalled Gengar and Chandelure, then climbed onto Dragonite's broad back. After settling in, he patted its neck. "Let's go, to Saffron City. As fast as possible." Dragonite responded. Its wings spread wide and beat powerfully. Its massive body lifted into the air. But the speed after takeoff made Kairos frown. This was considerably slower than expected. Given Dragonite's flying speed, it shouldn't be like this. Wind howled in his ears, but the scenery below moved only slightly faster than a speeding car. Was it being considerate of his flight experience? "Dragonite, can you go faster? We're in a hurry." Dragonite turned its head. Its huge eyes blinked. It let out a louder rumble. "Roar." It patted its round belly again with one claw. An apologetic and embarrassed expression crossed its face. Kairos understood without needing his dragon-type affinity ability. It was hungry. He was instantly speechless. Such an expensive service, and they don't even feed their employees? How cheap. Fine. He sighed and rummaged through his spatial backpack. He pulled out a canister of premium energy cubes he usually prepared for his own Pokémon. "Here, a little gift." Kairos popped open the seal. Rich energy fragrance wafted out immediately. He held the canister near Dragonite's mouth. Dragonite's eyes lit up instantly. It carefully took the canister with its claws, then eagerly lowered its head. Its tongue swept in, and more than half the energy cubes went down its gullet. Ruar. A satisfied, power-filled dragon roar echoed across the sky. After eating, Dragonite's body seemed instantly fueled up. Its previously steady wings suddenly erupted with tremendous power. They became blurred after images, tearing through the air with sharp sonic booms. Kairos only had time to grip the protruding scales on Dragonite's back before enormous force pressed him against the dragon. The scenery stretched into blurred streaks of light. Wild wind hit him head-on, making it almost impossible to open his eyes. Dragonite had been completely won over by those energy cubes. It was giving its full effort now. What would have originally taken several hours felt like barely any time. The massive, prosperous silhouette of Saffron City was already clearly visible below. Chapter 269 Saffron City's Bounty Guild, the only way to enter the Ghost World. Dragonite began slowing down, circling to find a landing spot near the guild. It touched down in a designated flying mount area, then smacked its lips and looked at Kairos with huge, expectant eyes. Kairos laughed and tossed it a small can. Thanks for the ride. I'll call you next time. Dragonite caught the treat and tucked it carefully into its special pouch. After a friendly roar, it spread its wings and took off, soon becoming a dot on the horizon. After saying goodbye to the greedy but reliable Dragonite, Kairos headed toward the Bounty Hunter Guild with Jengar and Chandelure. The guild was located in Saffron City's western district. He wished he had time to explore the city. Meeting this world's Sabrina would be interesting. He was curious whether she matched the game's version or the anime's. Plus, if she counted as a special character, he might promote the game to her and unlock psychic-type abilities from her character template. But that would have to wait. First things first. Saffron City's roads weren't complicated, and 10 minutes later, Kairos arrived at the Hunter Guild. The building looked completely different from the surrounding modern skyscrapers. Massive dark grey stones gave it a rough, heavy appearance. 2 wooden doors bound with metal corners formed the entrance, and above them hung a large, worn metal emblem showing crossed blades and a magnifying glass. Before Kairos even stepped inside, a complex smell hit him: tobacco, sweat, and a faint trace of blood. Loud voices mixed with Pokémon cries, clinking glasses, and rough laughter. This atmosphere reminded him of fantasy guilds from other worlds. Inside, the space opened up beneath a high vaulted ceiling. Large crystal lamps hung overhead, and torches flickered on the walls. Directly ahead, a massive metal board covered the entire wall, plastered with papers of various colors and sizes, bounty mission postings. Many people crowded around the board, pointing and discussing. Heavy wooden tables and benches filled the hall, occupied by burly figures and fierce-looking Pokémon. Kairos swept his gaze over them, assessing their strength. They weren't very strong. He didn't spot a single gym leader-level trainer. After observing for a moment, he walked toward the quieter service counter. A middle-aged woman in a guild uniform sat behind it, her expression stern. Kairos approached directly. "Hello, I want to post a mission. I need to hire a bounty hunter with access to the ghost world to take me there. What do I need to do?" The woman looked up and adjusted her glasses. Her gaze lingered briefly on Kairos's young face. "Posting a mission is fine, but entering the ghost world requires a permit. The hunter you hire must have one, and so must you as the client. What's your permit number? I need to register it." Kairos shrugged. "This route might not work. Sorry, I don't have a permit." "Then I can't help you." The woman's tone was flat. "According to the League's special space management regulations and guild rules, you can't post ghost world missions or accompany permit holders without your own permit. This is non-negotiable. Is there any way around this? I can pay extra." Kairos frowned. "No." The woman's answer was decisive. "Unless you prove yourself as a permit-holding hunter and enter on mission business. Or you register as a bounty hunter, join a team mission to the ghost world, and the guild will issue you a temporary permit." So they were back where they started. Kairos sighed inwardly. Registering as a bounty hunter seemed unavoidable. "Understood. Please register me as a bounty hunter." The woman looked surprised by this sudden turn, but recovered quickly. "All right. Fill out this form." She pulled out paperwork from under the counter. "The registration fee is 50,000 League currency. First-time registration also requires a strength certification battle to evaluate your initial star rating. You'll face a guild examiner in a one-on-one Pokémon battle. If you fail, the fee is non-refundable." Kairos filled out the form efficiently and paid. For his identity, he used the original owner's actual credentials in this world. Thanks to the system, no one connected this identity to the game creator. "Follow me." The woman stood and led Kairos through the noisy hall toward a passage with a heavy metal door. At the end was a standard indoor battle arena. A burly man in guild combat gear stood at the edge, accompanied by a sharp-eyed Zangoose. "This is Examiner Alec. The rules are simple: one match. Either defeat his Pokémon or last long enough." After introducing them, the woman retreated to the observation seats. "Start whenever you're ready, young man." Alec's voice boomed, his gaze appraising. Kairos nodded and threw out a Pokeball. Chandelure. Ghostly red flames ignited silently. Chandelure floated above the arena, its cold gaze locked on Zangoose. Feeling Chandelure's aura, Alec froze. This aura, something wasn't right. Zangoose, slash. But procedure was procedure. He gave the command. Zangoose became a yellow blur, its claws gleaming white as it lunged at Chandelure. Flame burst. Kairos's voice rang out. The ghostly flames around Chandelure surged. Several scorching fireballs shot out like cannonballs, intercepting Zangoose's path. Boom! 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 The fireballs exploded in succession. The shockwave engulfed Zangoose instantly. The Pokémon cried out in pain, blown backward by the force, and crashed to the ground with charred fur. After struggling twice, it fainted. The entire battle took less than 5 seconds. Alex's confident expression froze completely. He stood with his mouth open, unable to speak. His Zangoose wasn't particularly powerful, but it was elite level. Yet the opponent defeated it so easily. That meant this trainer's strength was at least gym leader level or higher. The middle-aged woman adjusted her glasses, surprise flashing in her eyes. She'd thought this was some rich kid wanting to tour the ghost world. Apparently, he had real strength. Ahem. Alec coughed. Strength, qualified. Congratulations, you're registered. Initial rating, 3-star hunter. He handed Kairos a metal badge with the guild emblem and 3 small silver stars. This starting rating was quite high. Newcomers typically received 1 or 2 stars. Kairos accepted the badge, thanked him, and returned to the noisy hall. He walked straight to the massive bounty board, scanning the densely packed mission postings. Sure enough, in a prominent section, many postings had special purple borders, all labeled Ghost World related. He looked carefully for solo missions or those with lower requirements. After all, he just wanted to enter the Ghost World, not actually complete missions. But his brow soon furrowed. The purple-bordered missions varied, investigating abnormal energy fluctuations, collecting mineral samples, clearing ghost-type Pokémon swarms, finding missing hunter squads. But without exception, they all stated team required or 3 or more people recommended. Kairos rubbed his temples. As a newcomer, where would he find a team willing to take a rookie into the ghost world? He scanned the postings again, searching for loopholes. Just as he considered checking the recruitment area, a loud voice from the hall's center caught his attention. Ghost World. Ghost World Exploration Mission. Safe and efficient. Generous rewards. Last 2 spots. Experienced veterans leading. Strength required at least 3-star hunters. Want to get rich and gain experience? Sign up now. Kairos looked toward the voice. A tall man in leather armor stood on a table, waving his arms. A prominent scar ran from his eye to his chin, giving him a fierce appearance. Beside him stood a muscular machoke with crossed arms, radiating an intimidating aura likely gym leader level. 7 or 8 people had already gathered around, listening to mission details. The scarred man continued. The mission is to venture into the ghost world's outer ring, the Shadow Valley, and collect at least 10 kilograms of shadow crystals. The client is Sylph Company, and the reward will satisfy everyone. Our Thunderhammer squad already has 3 veterans. We need 2 more. Requirements: at least 3 stars, ghost or psychic type Pokémon preferred, must follow orders. If you're scared or weak, don't waste our time. This seemed to be the only team actively recruiting for the ghost world. Kairos didn't hesitate. He pushed through the crowd. Hello, I'm interested in your mission. His voice wasn't loud, but it reached the scarred man clearly. Rex, captain of the Thunderhammer squad, stopped shouting and looked down at Kairos. Seeing his young, almost boyish face, Rex frowned, his eyes full of doubt and impatience. Hey, kid, you're in the wrong place. Rex sounded annoyed. Didn't you hear me? This is an S-rank mission, not for beginners. He pointed toward another section of the board. Try your luck over there. His words were relatively polite, but the meaning was clear. Several nearby hunters chuckled. Kairos repeated himself. I said, I'm interested in your mission. And I have 3-star qualifications. That should be enough. He displayed his freshly obtained badge. 3 stars. Rex looked surprised, glancing at the new badge. Just registered, right? Got lucky and beat the examiner? You might have some skill, but I'm telling you right now, don't jump straight into Ghost World missions. That place is no joke. If we bring you along and have to babysit you, it'll make our job harder. The onlookers nodded. 3-star meant the kid had some skill, but for Ghost World missions, that wasn't enough. Kairos said nothing. He simply tilted his head slightly, his gaze falling on the shadow beneath his feet. Kikik. A low, hoarse laugh arose without warning. Though not loud, it carried a strange penetrating quality that drowned out the hall's noise, drilling clearly into everyone's ears. The laughter stopped abruptly. A chill spread, and the hall's temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Rex's expression froze. His machoke suddenly tensed, uncrossing his arms into a defensive stance, eyes full of alarm. Under everyone's gaze, the shadow beneath Kairos's feet churned violently like boiling water. A massive, rotund purple body rose silently with an oppressive presence. The entire guild hall fell into dead silence. Everyone had the same thought. This aura. Not gym leader level. Not elite level. Quasi-elite 4 level? Chapter 270 Venturing deep into the ghost world, the Night Watchman of the ghost world lineage. Rex, who had been so dismissive just moments before, now had the scar on his face twitching. Beads of cold sweat formed on his forehead. He stared at the Jengar floating behind Kairos, its terrifying aura rolling off it in waves. His throat bobbed as he swallowed hard, the impatience in his eyes replaced entirely by shock and disbelief. This Jengar, this crushing pressure, was way beyond ordinary quasi-elite 4 level. Rex had clawed his way up to his current position step by step alongside his machoke, reaching mid-level quasi-elite 4 strength. Standing before this Jengar, he felt like a rookie trainer fresh out of Pallet Town. Kairos stood there calmly, as if the terrifying ghost type behind him was nothing out of the ordinary. He looked at Rex and asked in an even tone, "So, can I join your team now?" Rex opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at the Jengar radiating that horrifying aura, then at Kairos's young face. The muscles in his jaw twitched several times. Finally, he forced out a smile that looked more like a grimace. "Why yes. Of course you can. Ha ha ha. Listen, you really had me fooled there. That was all just a misunderstanding. Everything I said before, total misunderstanding." Rex laughed awkwardly, a note of helplessness in his voice. He quickly hopped down from the table, his attitude pulling a complete 180. "Welcome to the Thunderhammer Squad. With someone like you on board, this mission's as good as done. I'm Rex, team captain. What should I call you?" He stuck out his hand enthusiastically, acting like the impatient guy from a minute ago had never existed. Clearly, he hadn't become a Bounty Guild squad captain without learning how to read a room. Since Rex's attitude had changed, Kairos saw no reason to give him a hard time. He shook hands briefly, then recalled Jengar into his shadow. "Just call me Kairos." "Ahem. Kairos, great name. Really strong." Rex coughed, withdrew his hand and rubbed it, trying to reclaim some of his authority as captain. "Now that you're in, we're all on the same team. Come on, let me introduce you to everyone else." He led Kairos to a corner of the hall, gesturing to a red-haired woman nearby wearing tight leather gear. She had a striking figure but sharp, hawk-like eyes. "This is Lena. Poison-type specialist, handles reconnaissance and traps." Lena had her arms crossed, her gaze moving between Kairos and Jengar with a mixture of scrutiny and curiosity. She gave a small nod. At her feet, an Arbok flicked its tongue, also eyeing Kairos with interest. "And this is Barton," Rex said, pointing to a bald giant of a man nearly 2 meters tall, built like a brick wall. The man was silently polishing his glasses. "He's our tank. Ground types are his specialty." Barton barely glanced up at Kairos before going back to cleaning his glasses. Beside him stood a massive golem like a small mountain, radiating a steady, crushing presence. Like the Arbok, it appeared to be early quasi-elite 4 level. "Including me and my buddy Machoke here," Rex said, patting the still tense fighting type beside him, "we Thunderhammer Squad have built quite a reputation in this part of Saffron City. This Ghost World mission is all about harvesting shadow crystal clusters from the Kenyan zone. Sylph company's paying good money, but it's not without risk. Kairos, your strength is, exceptional. You'll fill in our long-range and special attack gaps perfectly." Even as he said this, his body still trembled slightly, clearly haunted by what Jengar had shown him. "What are the mission details?" Kairos kept it brief. "Oh, right, Rex said quickly, pulling out a scroll-style map and a data pad from inside his jacket. "This is a partial map of the Ghost World's third ring zone, provided by the Guild. The Kenyans right here. His thick finger jabbed at an area marked in deep purple on the map. This type of ore usually forms near mineral veins deep in the canyon, at energy hotspots. Problem is, that area's also a nesting ground for duslops and bayonet. Whole swarms of them. Real pain in the ass. On top of that, there's this weird wind that flows through the canyon naturally, causes continuous mental erosion to non-ghost type Pokémon and trainers. You'll need protection. As he spoke, the other two team members seemed to snap out of their daze, their eyes landing on Kairos once more. Lena spoke first. Wait, he's not the client. Rex waved her off. Don't worry about it. Trust me, he's stronger than all of us combined. I saw it myself just now. With that, he handed the data pad to Kairos. A string of mission information was displayed on the screen. Mission requirements: collect at least 10 kilograms of shadow crystal clusters meeting purity standards, 75%. The temporary pass issued by the guild is valid for 72 hours, beginning from entry into the Ghost World portal. Failure to exit before expiration will result in pass invalidation. You proceed at your own risk. Kairos scanned the information quickly, focusing on the description of the wind and the recommended protective measures. It required wearing a guild-made item called a focus amulet or relying on the psychic power of psychic or ghost-type Pokémon to shield the trainer. Equipment and supplies can be purchased from the guild, but they cost extra. Or you can bring your own. Rex added. The focus amulet's essential. 10,000 league dollars each. If you don't have one, I could lend you one. I'm fine. I've got my own methods. Kairos cut him off. His backpack was stuffed with all kinds of gear. He should be able to find something with a similar function. Besides, with Jengar and Chandelure around, if ghost types could handle the problem, then some wind shouldn't be an issue. All right. Rex looked relieved. 10,000 wasn't pocket change for him either. In that case, let's all head to the Ghost World entrance now. It's in the teleportation hall on the guild's third basement level. The group left the noisy guild hall, descending the heavy stone staircase. The atmosphere grew quiet. Lena and Barton kept their distance from Kairos, the two of them seeming to discuss something. Clearly they still had doubts about Kairos's strength. That was normal, and Kairos didn't mind. Rex walked at the front, Machoke close behind, muscles still coiled tight, obviously not yet recovered from the shock Jengar had delivered. Kairos took in his surroundings. The third basement level was cavernous, with huge crystals emitting soft white light embedded in the domed ceiling. At the center sat a massive circular platform constructed from intricate symbols and countless steel pipes. This had to be the teleportation array to the Ghost World. Standing at the platform's edge were two stern-faced inspectors in League uniforms. Beside them stood sharp-eyed Alakazam, their powerful psychic fields blanketing the entire area, maintaining the teleportation array's stability and monitoring all comings and goings. Thunderhammer Squad. We've accepted the Phantom Canyon Crystal Cluster Collection mission, number G734. Rex stepped forward, presenting his hunter badge and mission credentials. An inspector took the items, scanning and verifying them with a handheld device, while an Alakazam's psychic power swept over the squad members. Release your partner Pokémon. When scanning Kairos, the inspector's gaze lingered on his young face for a moment before shifting to the Jengar behind him with its staggering aura. He raised an eyebrow. What's this kid's story? So young, but with a Jengar that powerful? Identity confirmed. Mission valid. The inspector returned the badge and credentials. Temporary pass activated, bound to squad member identity data. Pass is valid for 72 hours. If you don't make it back in time, the entrance will be sealed one way. You proceed at your own risk. Let me emphasize again, attacking Ghost World Pokémon without provocation is strictly forbidden. Large-scale destruction of the Ghost World environment is strictly forbidden. Carrying undeclared contraband in or out is strictly forbidden. Violators will have their hunter qualifications permanently revoked and face legal action from the League. Understood, understood, we know the drill. Rex nodded repeatedly. Prepare for teleportation. Stand on the platform and stay still, the other inspector instructed. Kairos stepped onto the cold metal platform with Jengar. Rex, Lena, Barton and their Pokémon quickly took their positions as well. Lena slipped on a small amulet. Barton activated a device on Golem that emitted an earthy yellow energy field enveloping both of them. Rex and Machoke also weren't about to tough it out with just their bodies, honestly putting on their amulets. The next moment, the runes on the teleportation array lit up one by one, blue-white energy currents surging and weaving through the patterns. Space began to warp slightly, light stretching and bending. A powerful sense of weightlessness and spatial tearing washed over them. The runes on the teleportation array blazed with blue light. Kairos instinctively took a deep breath, feeling like he was standing on a rapidly spinning vortex. Honestly, this sensation was somewhat similar to using the dimensional communicator to cross worlds. Kikik. Beside him, Jengar let out a questioning cry, clearly sensing the same déjà vu. The surging shadow energy around it immediately expanded, wrapping Kairos in a thin black mist barrier that blocked out some of the spatial turbulence. On the other side, Rex, Lena, and Barton were clearly struggling under the immense pressure. Rex gritted his teeth, veins bulging on his forehead. Machoke gripped his shoulder tightly, barely keeping him stable. Lena's face was pale, Arbok coiled around her, its serpent eyes narrowed to slits. Barton was the most composed, his massive golem looking rooted to the platform, the earthy yellow energy field wrapped tightly around both him and Barton, resisting the spatial chaos. The dizzying, disorienting sensation didn't last long. The humming cut off abruptly, the blinding blue light vanishing like a receding tide. A completely different, bone-deep cold replaced the warmth of the guild's underground hall, like countless tiny ice needles piercing through clothing and stabbing straight into the body. The scene before them had changed entirely. No dome, no crystal lights, no thick stone walls. The sky was a frozen grey, like a massive curtain hanging low, oppressively close. No sun, no moon, only dim, sourceless pale white light barely illuminating this desolate landscape. Kairos noticed the ground beneath his feet was dark brown, dry and cracked, with only jagged black rocks scattered across it. The air carried an indescribable smell. Desolate, silent, ruined. That was Kairos's first impression of the ghost world. If he didn't know he was in the ghost world, he'd swear he'd ended up back in the lower districts of the second world. However, on this barren wasteland, not far from the teleportation array, there stood a complex of buildings completely at odds with the surroundings. It was a deep grey fortress-style structure, rugged in design, radiating an air of weathered age. The complex was substantial in size, with towering walls around the perimeter covered in intricate, faintly purple glowing runes. Through gaps in the walls, Kairos could see towers and buildings in the same style. Figures in dark grey or black standard uniforms moved about busily, most accompanied by ghost-type Pokémon of various forms. Haunter, Mismagius, Driftblim, there was even a massive Dusknoir radiating heavy, oppressive power patrolling slowly. An invisible, powerful psychic field surrounded the entire complex, walling off the cold, desolate death of the wasteland outside. Phew, finally made it. Rex exhaled heavily, working his neck which had stiffened from the spatial tearing, his voice sounding abrupt in the silence. He explained. Hey, this your first time here? Let me fill you in. See that? That's the Ghost World Lineage's territory. They call it the Night Watcher Fortress. We need to stop there first to register before we can head deeper to carry out our mission. He pointed at the complex, a trace of unmistakable reverence in his tone. Ghost World Lineage. Kairos's gaze swept over the fortress before returning to Rex. The mission briefing had specifically mentioned they were his target group, but there wasn't much about them available online. Jengar floated slowly behind him, crimson eyes surveying this world that felt both intimately familiar and oddly foreign now. Yeah, a bunch of weirdos who specialize in ghost-type Pokémon. Or maybe, guardians is a better word. As Rex led the squad toward the heavy, rivet-covered metal gate of the fortress, he explained. This ghost world hellhole, as you can see, is barren as all get out, but the ghost-type Pokémon living here are terrifyingly numerous. In the past, nobody managed them, and these things would constantly swarm into the real world in groups, causing all kinds of havoc. Scaring people to death was the least of the problems. Then, about 100 years ago, this group calling themselves the Ghost World Lineage showed up and put down roots here. They're incredibly powerful, and their methods are, well, pretty unique. Anyway, they managed to get the situation under control, establishing order. They specifically guard the various entrances between the ghost world and reality, preventing large-scale ghost-type Pokémon invasions. But in exchange, the ghost world became their territory. Now anyone wanting to enter the ghost world needs their permission, or has to go through official channels. He paused, lowering his voice slightly. That ghost-type specialist from Kanto known for her temper, Elite Four Agatha, spent a long time training here when she was young. Supposedly her strength skyrocketed during that period, and she later became an Elite Four member in one shot. Hearing this, Kairos paused for a moment. Agatha, one of Kanto's Elite Four, came from here? It seemed this Ghost World lineage had quite the pedigree. Chapter 271 Sudden Ghost World Tide, Mission Changes? Being able to train even Elite Four level trainers, this Ghost World lineage sounded like a powerful organization rooted here, maintaining the balance between both worlds. The Ghost World turmoil mentioned in the SS rank mission seemed more complex than imagined. Even an organization like this was on high alert. 2 guards stood at the fortress gate, wearing dark grey standard leather armor, their faces expressionless. Floating beside each of them was a hunter with a calm aura. Rex stepped forward and presented his hunter badge and mission credentials again. After careful inspection, one guard nodded and said in a completely flat tone, "Thunderhammer Squad, mission is Crystal Cluster Collection. Enter the registration area." The gate slid inward silently, and an even denser cold aura than outside hit them in the face, mixed with faint herbal scents and some kind of incense. The fortress interior was spacious, with polished dark stone slabs for flooring and walls embedded with softly glowing white crystals. Personnel came and went hurriedly, most with grave expressions, accompanied by well-trained ghost-type Pokémon. The squad was guided to a room resembling a reception hall. The room's furnishings were simple, just a few stone chairs and a massive stone table. Behind the table sat a woman. She appeared to be around 30, wearing a well-tailored deep purple outfit with an antique-styled black short cloak over it. The woman had attractive features and neat short black hair with a few strands hanging over her forehead, but her eyes carried an ice-cold aloofness that kept people at 1,000 miles distance, along with obvious fatigue. She was looking down, quickly flipping through a scroll in her hands, her brow deeply furrowed. When the squad entered, she looked up, her gaze sweeping over everyone before finally settling on Captain Rex. Her eyes were sharp, as if they could see through people's hearts, carrying the scrutinizing air of someone long in a position of authority. "Thunderhammer Squad? Shadow Crystal Cluster Collection Mission." Her voice, like her appearance, was crisp, decisive, and cold. "Yes, ma'am." Under this aura, even Rex unconsciously restrained his usual attitude and straightened his back. "We're here to report, preparing to head to Shadow Valley for the mission." The woman set down the scroll, leaned forward slightly, crossed her hands on the table, and announced in a completely flat tone. "Listen. The mission is now cancelled." "What?" The respect on Rex's face was instantly replaced by shock. "Cancelled? Why?" "We signed a commission contract. Sylph Company. The Ghost World tide has erupted." The woman cut him off, her tone sharp. "Just 2 hours ago. Right now, the entire outer ring and parts of the deep layers are on high alert. Forget your mission. All non-emergency, non-essential exploration missions are suspended. This is a direct order from Nightwatch headquarters." Lena and Barton's expressions changed instantly. Lena couldn't help speaking. "Ghost World tide? How could it be so sudden? We had no news at all. Ghost World matters don't need to be explained to you." The woman's gaze swept coldly over Lena with a trace of impatience. "That's the situation. Mission cancelled. You can choose to leave the Ghost World immediately, and the guild will provide basic compensation. Or..." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the squad members again. "If you're confident enough in your strength and willing to take the risk, you can stay and help us handle the Ghost World tide. Of course, the reward will be very generous. Double what your original mission promised." "Double?" Rex gasped, his eyes widening instantly. Sylph Company's price was already quite good, and doubled. 250,000. This was absolutely a huge sum that would make any bounty hunter's heart race. Lena and Barton's eyes also flashed with interest, but it was quickly tempered by the pressure brought by those 3 words Ghost World tide. Obviously, they knew what the Ghost World tide meant. "What is the Ghost World tide?" Kairos's voice rang out in the silence, breaking the atmosphere while sounding somewhat out of place. The woman seemed to truly notice Kairos's excessively young face for the first time, along with the astonishingly powerful, abnormally large Jengar behind him and the chandelier radiating cold flames. Her gaze lingered on Jengar for a moment, a flash of barely perceptible surprise crossing her eyes before quickly returning to normal. "Ghost World tide," she looked at Kairos, her tone still flat but with less of the previous sternness. "You can understand it as a large-scale, Chaotic eruption of Ghost World energy. It causes native ghost Pokémon in the Ghost World to become extremely violent with greatly increased aggression, possibly even awakening some slumbering powerful existences. Space also becomes extremely unstable. Those who enter lose their sense of direction, energy detection devices malfunction, and the danger level is several times higher than normal. Historically, every large-scale Ghost World tide has been accompanied by many deaths. She paused and added, so, the choice is yours. If you want to leave, you can go to the teleportation hall now. If you stay, you'll need to sign a new temporary employment contract, obey our commands, and be responsible for your own life and death. Rex's facial muscles twitched, clearly engaged in intense internal struggle. The doubled reward was too tempting, but he'd heard plenty about the Ghost World tide's fierce reputation. Still, as a bounty hunter, this wasn't his first time facing mortal danger. He gritted his teeth and looked at Lena and Barton. Lena's eyes flickered, but she ultimately nodded, and Arbok hissed as it flicked its tongue. Though Barton remained silent, in this situation, silence was a form of consent. Screw it, let's do it. Rex slapped his thigh and turned to the woman. We'll stay. Double reward. You better keep your word. The woman's face showed no surprise, she simply nodded. Smart choice. The contract is here. Sign it. She pushed over a parchment scroll. Rex signed his name without hesitation and pressed his handprint. Lena and Barton followed suit. When it was Kairos's turn, the woman looked at him and confirmed again. What about you? Young man. The Ghost World tide is no joke. Your Pokémon are strong, but your experience. Her gaze swept over Jengar and Chandelure, the meaning clear. Kairos didn't answer. He simply picked up the pen and signed his name on the contract, the action crisp and decisive. His thinking was clear. The timing of the Ghost World tide eruption was too coincidental. This was very likely the beginning of the turmoil mentioned in the mission, so he had to stay and dig deeper to find clues and possibly complete that optional path. As for danger? Worst case scenario, if things went wrong, he'd just find a way to escape. Seeing Kairos sign the contract, the last trace of doubt in the woman's eyes disappeared. She collected the scroll and stood up. Good. I'm Raven, the executor in charge of this area's outer perimeter security. Welcome to the temporary Nightwatch sequence. Now, you have your first mission. Without wasting words, she pointed directly at a crude map drawn on some kind of parchment on the stone table. The Ghost World tide eruption point is deep in the outer ring, but now the shockwave has spread to areas near the teleportation fortress. We have a 7-person squad stationed at the third outpost. That's one of the key passages from the outer ring into the deep layers. Right now, the first wave of many ghost Pokémon impacts has covered that area. Their supplies, especially the focus potions used to stabilize the mind and resist the wind, are almost depleted and need replenishment. She pushed a small metal box of special material in front of Rex. The box was branded with the Ghost World lineage's emblem, an abstract eye pattern with a pupil formed by ghostly blue flame patterns. Your mission is to safely deliver this box of supplies to the third outpost and hand it to their captain, Iron Rock. The route is marked on the map. Raven's gaze swept over everyone. I must remind you, during the Ghost World tide, spatial disturbance is severe. Any directional instruments will fail, including the compass on your hunter badges. Moreover, berserk ghost Pokémon are everywhere and extremely dangerous. Does anyone still want to withdraw? Rex picked up the box. It was heavy in his hands. He grinned, revealing a fierce smile. No turning back once the arrow is loosed. Third outpost, right? Leave it to us. As long as there's money, there's nothing we can't do. Lena and Barton also nodded. Seeing this, Raven continued. Additionally, you may encounter wandering ghost Pokémon on the road. Be careful. After completing the mission, the base portion of the doubled reward will be paid to you immediately. Any other questions? Rex looked at the winding route marked with various danger symbols on the map, his head hurting already. Executor Raven, this, without directional equipment, just relying on this map, the Ghost World is already easy to get lost in, and now. That's a difficulty you need to overcome. Raven cut him off without hesitation. We Nightwatchers never rely on external tools when executing missions. If you can't do it, withdrawing now is still an option. Her gaze carried a trace of barely perceptible pride. Kairos's gaze fell on the map. Those crude lines and vague markings would indeed be useless under the Ghost World Tide's interference. But for him, navigation really wasn't a problem. He discreetly pulled up the system panel and directly activated the terrain generation module, beginning to generate a map of the entire Ghost World area. He'd entered the Ghost World too recently, and with too much information, he'd only just remembered this. No problem. Kairos spoke calmly, his voice not loud, but causing both the somewhat anxious Rex and Raven to look over. I can lead the way. You. Rex looked at him in astonishment, then at the Jengar floating behind him. Are you relying on its sensing? Under the Ghost World Tide's energy turbulence, even Ghost-type Pokémon's perception will be greatly disrupted. Raven also frowned slightly, clearly not believing Kairos had any particularly good method. Kairos didn't explain, simply saying flatly, just follow me. Raven stared at him for several seconds, seemingly trying to find traces of arrogance or bluffing on his face, but only saw calm. She finally nodded, her tone still cold. Fine. Deliver the supplies, complete the mission. Remember, time is tight. Iron Rock and his team can't hold out much longer. Depart. And so, their squad, carrying that heavy supply box, once again stepped onto the Ghost World's desolate, cold earth. Leaving the weak mental force field protection of the Nightwatch Fortress, that feeling of the wind immediately became clearer. This wasn't physical wind, but an invisible, continuous mental erosion, like cold fine needles pricking at one's mind, making people irritable and unable to concentrate. Lena immediately activated her focus charm, and a layer of faint white light enveloped her. Barton's golem also emitted a denser earthy yellow glow, protecting him within it. Rex and Machoke relied on strong will and constitution to endure, but their expressions were clearly much more grave, obviously finding this task very taxing. Kairos walked at the front. Jengar circled around him, shadow energy pervading and enveloping him, instantly blocking most of the wind's erosive sensation. He casually chose directions, the cracked black soil and jagged strange rocks beneath his feet continuously extending forward. Hey, man, do you actually know the way? After walking for about 10 minutes, the surrounding environment remained almost unchanged, only endless desolation and distorted black withered trees in the distance. Rex couldn't help asking in a low voice, his tone carrying doubt and anxiety. Not that I have anything against you, but I'm saying, this direction, seems different from the map? The route Raven gave was northeastish, but we seem to be constantly going northwest. Lena also frowned, her fingers rubbing Arbok's cold scales. Beside Barton, the golem was constantly scanning the surroundings vigilantly. The map is already useless under the Ghost World Tide. Kairos didn't look back, his steps not stopping. Didn't she just say? Right now the Ghost World's energy flow is chaotic, space is folded and twisted. Following the map will only take us further from the target. Then how do you know which way to go? Rex raised his voice. Kairos didn't answer, his vision falling on the panel only he could see before him. A clear, three-dimensional topographical map covering a 10-kilometer radius was in his field of vision. Where relatively stable safe paths were, where violent energy turbulence formed vortexes, where heat source concentration zones of ghost Pokémon activity were, all clearly marked. A winding green line avoiding all danger zones and pointing toward the third outpost's location on the map clearly extended through the complex terrain. Relying on intuition. Don't ask. Kairos gave an answer that almost made Rex jump. But he turned his steps and walked unhesitatingly into an area that looked even more rugged, filled with massive weathered rock pillars. You. Rex was at a loss for words, but seeing Kairos's confident back, and seeing no signs of danger around them, he could only steel himself and follow, muttering under his breath. Damn it, if we go the wrong way and everyone gets trapped here, I'll be the first to. His complaint wasn't finished when Kairos, leading the way ahead, suddenly stopped without warning and raised his hand to signal the three not to make a sound. Chapter 272 Just who the hell is this guy? What's wrong? Lena tensed up, Arbok raising its head with fangs bared. Barton waved his hand forward. His golem lumbered into position to block the path. Kairos's eyes were locked on a corner of the system map. At the edge of a low valley up ahead, a deep red heat signature marked something powerful lying in wait. The intensity of that crimson glow was unmistakable, a powerful ghost-type Pokémon. Next to that red dot sat several faint green markers, barely hanging on. From what Kairos had seen before, green meant allies. Those had to be Night Watcher tags. Valley entrance up ahead, right side, about 300 meters out. Kairos kept his voice low. We've got a situation. Something seriously dangerous, and there might be night watchers trapped in there. The other three turned to look. The valley entrance was choked with jagged rocks that blocked their line of sight, but they could all feel it, a bone-chilling presence seeping out from that direction. They'd been doing this long enough to know when something was way out of their league. Their detection gear was picking up nothing but static. Which meant Kairos was probably dead on. Damn it, we actually ran into one. Rex's face went dark. Can we loop around? Going around would cost us at least an hour and take us straight into heavier danger zones. Kairos studied the map. This thing's sitting right on the flank of our route. It's set up to ambush anyone passing through. A shrill, ear-splitting roar tore through the air from the valley entrance. The sound was saturated with pain and rage. Several quick, panicked shouts followed. Energy flared. Then everything went quiet. The presence started spreading rapidly in their direction. That's a Night Watcher distress call. Lena's expression shifted. She seemed to recognize the Ghost World lineage's signals. Shit. Rex spat. The Night Watchers weren't pushovers. Whatever was out there had to be strong. Barton, Lena, you're with me. We're going to check it out. Rex's voice cut through the tension. Kairos, you grab the supply crate and fall back to the fortress. Report this and get reinforcements. My Machoke, Barton's golem, and I will try to keep that thing busy. There wasn't a trace of hesitation in his eyes. Machoke dropped into a combat stance, muscles bulging, eyes locked hard on the valley entrance. The fear it had shown against Jengar earlier was completely gone. Barton stepped up beside him. The rocky armor on his golem ground and creaked, ready to take a hit. Kairos looked at Rex with some surprise. This foul-mouthed guy who'd been complaining non-stop was now, when it actually mattered, showing real guts. He was putting himself and his team in the line of fire so Kairos could escape with the knowledge of the route. Rough around the edges, but solid underneath. What about you? Kairos asked. We're tougher than we look. Quit wasting time and go. Rex barked, already pulling out pokeballs to call in backup. Kairos shook his head. His gaze moved past Rex toward the valley entrance, where the hostile presence was growing more violent by the second. No need. I'll take care of it. What? Rex, Lena, and Barton froze. They stared at Kairos like he'd completely lost it. Take care of it himself? The aura rolling off that thing from hundreds of meters away was making their skin crawl. That was Elite 4 level danger. Even if their whole team worked together, they might not last 5 minutes. Have you lost your mind? Even the Ghost World lineage couldn't stop it. With that kind of presence, that's an Elite 4 level crazed ghost. This isn't some training exercise. Rex was practically yelling. Kairos didn't bother explaining. He just tossed out another pokeball. Ghostly blue flames rose in silence. Not the warm glow from before, but something cold and suffocating. Chandelure's body, forged from black metal and frigid fire, drifted forward. It floated in front of Kairos, its flame core fixed on the valley entrance as a massive, overwhelming aura rolled out. Far beyond quasi-Elite 4 level. Elite 4 level. Rex's eyes went white as plates. No more than that. His jaw dropped. The shock from seeing Jengar earlier was nothing compared to this. He'd thought Jengar was Kairos's ace. He never imagined there'd be a second Pokémon with this kind of terrifying power. Lena gasped and stumbled back a step. Arbok coiled itself tighter, its serpent eyes filled with fear. Even Barton, usually stone-faced, gripped his shield harder. Golem let out an uneasy rumble. The thing at the valley entrance seemed furious at Chandelure's undisguised presence. Boom! A massive boulder, easily several tons, lifted into the air by some invisible force. It came screaming toward their position. Before the rock even got close, a wave of cold psychic pressure slammed down on them, thick with madness, malice, and raw destructive intent. Watch out! Rex roared. Machoke bellowed, about to charge. Chandelure, heat wave. Kairos's voice stayed calm, but it cut through the chaos with an odd clarity. The ghostly blue flames around Chandelure surged. The fire transformed into a roaring tide that erupted forward in a wide arc. Whoosh! The incoming boulder touched the ghostly blue flames. It didn't explode. It just melted, dissolving at a visible rate until there was nothing left. The psychic assault crashed into the wall of fire. The ghostly blue flames flickered for a moment, then burned the attack clean away. The wave of fire kept going, slamming hard into the right side of the valley entrance. Rumble. Rocks shattered under the extreme heat. Through the billowing dust and smoke, a massive figure emerged. A colossal trevenant, standing over 4 meters tall. Its body was a twisted mass of pitch black, charred tree trunks and thorned vines. In the hollow pits where its eyes should be, 2 burning masses of crimson light glowed. An impossibly dense black aura wrapped around its entire frame, and countless wraith-like wisps howled and churned across its surface. One massive arm still radiated energy from hurling that boulder. Early Elite 4 level crazed presence crashed over them like a tidal wave, hammering their nerves. Trevenant. Elite 4 level. Rex's voice cracked with despair. A crazed ghost at this level, pumped up by the Ghost World Surge, had unimaginable destructive power. Then it hit him. Wait. That Chandelure's strength. The crazed Trevenant roared. Its crimson eyes locked onto Chandelure and Kairos. Its massive body exploded forward with shocking speed. Countless pitch black, spike-covered vines tore through the air with ear-splitting shrieks, blanketing everything in front of it. Wherever the vines passed, even the air seemed to corrode, leaving faint black trails. Shadow Ball. Kairos called out the move. Chandelure hovered in place. Its ghostly blue flame core spun rapidly. Black energy spheres the size of human heads condensed and fired off like rapid-fire cannons. Each shadow ball struck the tip of an incoming vine with surgical precision. Boom! 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 The explosions blended together into one continuous roar. Black energy and shredded vine fragments scattered everywhere. Trevenant's vine assault was torn apart, but more vines kept growing, tangling forward like an endless dark tide. Trevenant roared again. Its massive trunk shook. Countless black, seed-like points of light shot from its surface, raining down toward Chandelure's position. When those black points hit the ground, they absorbed the surrounding ghost world death energy and swelled into pitch black, red-eyed forms. So it had been carrying that many bayonet all along. Dozens of bayonet rushed toward Chandelure in a swarm. Will-o-wisp, ring expansion. Kairos's command came without hesitation. The flames around Chandelure contracted for a moment, then dozens of ghostly blue fires drifted outward. They intercepted the charging bayonet swarm with perfect accuracy. There were no violent explosions. The bayonet touched by will-o-wisps ignited like paper, consumed by ghostly blue flames and collapsing to the ground. Just as the will-o-wisps cleared the field, Trevenant's massive form vanished from where it stood. The next instant, it reappeared diagonally above Chandelure. A giant claw wrapped in dense black energy carried terrifying force as it came crashing down at blinding speed. This strike had all its power behind it. Watch out! Rex and the others' hearts jumped into their throats. It closed the distance? Kairos raised an eyebrow. Then I'm not holding back. For the first time, he activated the effect of his character skill Dragon's Majesty, Pressure Domain. An invisible, crushing pressure from the deepest reaches of dragon-type bloodlines erupted outward with Kairos at the center. This wasn't energy. This was pure presence, the kind of suppression only dragon types could produce. Dragon's might blanketed dozens of meters in every direction. Trevenant took the full brunt of it. Its descending claw froze mid-strike. In its crimson, maddened eyes, fear and confusion flickered for the first time. It was as if the thing in front of it wasn't a human but a dragon-type Pokémon several times more powerful than itself. Its crazed psyche, driven wild by the Ghost World Surge, crumbled under that immense pressure. Its movements locked up for just a moment. That instant was fatal at this level of combat. Overheat? Kairos commanded. Chandelure reacted immediately. Its ghostly blue flame core shifted from cold to blazing red, as if a miniature sun had ignited inside its body. Massive fire-type energy compressed to its absolute limit, then erupted all at once. A concentrated beam of fire tore through the ghost world's dim sky and struck dead center on Trevenant's massive chest, still frozen by Dragon's might. Boom! Blinding firelight swallowed Trevenant's entire body. Violent shockwaves exploded outward in concentric rings, stripping away a layer of the black rock beneath them. Scorching heat waves mixed with the smell of burning wood rushed forward. The white-hot glow lasted several seconds before it finally faded. When the light cleared, Rex, Lena, Barton, and all their Pokémon stood frozen in place. Trevenant's massive body had visibly shrunk. A huge charred cavity, over 2 meters across, had been blasted clean through its chest. The trunks and vines around the edges were still smoldering with black smoke. Around the cavity, the crimson light had been snuffed out completely, leaving only a lifeless grey. Its massive body swayed once, then crashed to the ground with a thunderous impact. Dust kicked up in a thick cloud. Dead silence. One hit. Just one hit. An Elite 4 level crazed Trevenant, obliterated under Chandelure's attack. The entire area fell into a deathly quiet. Rex's mouth hung open. His Adam's apple bobbed, but no sound came out. He looked at Kairos's still calm profile, then at Chandelure hovering in front of him with its flames slowly shifting back to ghostly blue, as if that world-ending strike had never even happened. His gaze dropped to the massive charred corpse on the ground. A chill mixed with shock ran straight through him. Lena's face had gone pale. She stared at Kairos with a mixture of shock and awe. Arbok beside her was pressed flat against the ground, trembling. For the first time, intense emotion showed on Barton's face. What he'd just witnessed was so far beyond anything he'd imagined. They finally understood why this young guy named Kairos had dared to come into the ghost world with them. Why he'd dared to face down an Elite 4 level ghost world Pokémon. Because he was a wolf in sheep's clothing. He didn't just have a peak quasi-Elite 4 Jengar. He also had a terrifying Chandelure capable of killing Elite 4 level crazed ghosts in a single strike. And that invisible pressure at the end, the one that had left even their minds blank. That had come from him, too. Just who the hell is this guy? Chapter 273 The tidal wave of battle in the ghost world, critical information. Kairos ignored his shocked teammates behind him. He walked over to the massive Trevenant corpse and pulled out a Pokeball. The enormous body dissolved into red light and vanished into the ball, which clicked shut without so much as a wobble. For an elite-level ghost-type Pokémon, injuries like these weren't fatal, though they were pretty serious. He'd need to get someone from the ghost world to heal this Trevenant later. After all, it had only attacked because of the ghost tide's influence and was basically innocent. Meanwhile, Chandelure's flames lit up the gaps between several nearby rocks. Come out. It's safe now. Kairos pocketed the Pokeball and called toward the crevice. A moment later, 3 young people in black uniforms stumbled out from behind the rocks, supporting each other. Their faces were pale, clearly still shaken from being hunted by the Trevenant. They were all injured and looked exhausted, obviously pushed to their limits during Trevenant's pursuit. When they saw the massive, charred remains of the Trevenant on the ground, and Kairos standing beside it with his ghostly red-flamed Chandelure hovering nearby, their shock matched that of Rex and the others. Did you save us? The lead teenager, blood streaking his face, asked in a raspy voice, his eyes filled with gratitude and disbelief. Don't worry about it. Just happened to be passing by, Kairos said briefly, pointing at the supply crate Rex was carrying. We're delivering supplies to the 3rd outpost. Come with us. The 3 night watchers snapped out of their daze and quickly nodded, staring at Kairos in confusion. They simply couldn't understand how this young man could have taken down that Trevenant. Could he actually be some powerful expert in disguise? Ghost-type and Psychic-type Pokémon trainers could pull off something like this pretty easily. Yeah, that had to be it. With these 3 Ghost World survivors joining them, they continued toward the 3rd outpost under Kairos's lead. This time, Rex, Lena, and Barton followed silently behind Kairos, not daring to voice a single doubt or even breathe too loud. They kept exchanging glances, and the meaning behind their silent communication was obvious. The rest of the trip went surprisingly smoothly. Kairos always managed to avoid those crazed ghost swarms and chaotic energy zones ahead of time, large and small. Occasionally, when they ran into scattered, reckless frenzied Pokémon, Kairos didn't even need to lift a finger. Rex and his team would rush forward to deal with them, as if trying to make up for sitting out earlier. About half an hour later, an outpost came into view. It stood between 2 massive black cliffs, built from solid rock and covered with defensive runes and energy turrets. Outside the outpost, intense battle scars were visible everywhere, scorched earth, shattered rocks, and lingering traces of ghost-type energy. The air was thick with smoke and the characteristic cold of ghost energy. The outpost's gates were shut tight, with figures moving along the high walls, keeping watch. Only when they spotted the 3 surviving night watchers arriving with the supply team did the gates slowly open. A burly, tower-like bald man stood at the entrance, wearing heavy black armor with a nasty scar across his face. Beside him floated an unusually large dusk noir, radiating serious power. Reporting to Captain Pharaoh. Supplies delivered. The surviving night watcher saluted excitedly. Pharaoh's gaze swept over the supply crate, landed on Rex's squad, and finally, his sharp eyes settled on Kairos and the elite-level Chandelure hovering beside him. He'd obviously already heard what happened on the road through communications. The Thunderhammer squad? A&D. This Mr. Kairos. Pharaoh's voice was deep and powerful. He strode forward, ignoring Rex's outstretched hand, and walked straight up to Kairos. His weathered eyes stared at him intently. Thank you for stepping in when you did, and for saving these 3 idiots. Pharaoh's voice was grave. And thank you even more for delivering the supplies and getting us out of a tight spot. I, Pharaoh, on behalf of all the night watchers of the 3rd outpost, offer you our highest respect. He struck his chest hard with his fist in what seemed to be the night watcher's own salute. Kairos nodded slightly in acknowledgement. Pharaoh lowered his hand, his gaze sharpening. Sir, your strength is way beyond that of ordinary bounty hunters. With the Ghost Tide outbreak, the outer perimeter is under massive pressure, and positions like the 3rd outpost are feeling it even more. We're seriously short-handed here, and high-level fighters are especially scarce. He took a deep breath, his tone carrying a note of request. May I, personally, ask you to stay at the 3rd outpost temporarily to help us defend? In terms of payment, the Night Watcher Fortress definitely won't shortchange you. The Ghost World will also remember this debt. After everything settles down, we can get you into the Ghost World. Rex and the others were stunned when they heard this. A debt from the Ghost World. Get into the Ghost World. If anyone else heard these words, they'd agree without hesitation, probably overjoyed. Because the implications were huge. The Ghost World's resources were impressive, and their influence was enormous. Countless powerful trainers had tried to join the Ghost World, only to be turned away at the door. And now, Kairos had this chance. They knew this mysterious and powerful young man probably wouldn't be running small missions with their squad anymore. Kairos's gaze moved past Pharaoh, looking toward the back of the outpost. There, in the direction marked as the deep zone on the map, the energy turbulence in the air was even more violent. Faint but heavy energy explosions and the shrieks of countless ghost Pokémon could be heard. He didn't answer Pharaoh right away, but instead turned to Rex. All right, your mission's done. When you get back to settle up with Moyu, take my share too. I don't need the money. Rex was stunned, then quickly nodded. Yes, yes. Kairos, no, Sir Kairos, you go ahead. We owe you big time. If the Thunderhammer squad can ever help out in the future, just say the word, and I, Rex, swear I'll do whatever it takes. Kairos nodded, saying nothing more. His gaze returned to that chaotic area leading into the depths of the Ghost World. I'm willing to help. Let's go. Pharaoh's weathered eyes lingered on Kairos for a moment. Your willingness to help is truly appreciated. His voice carried a trace of rough gratitude, but without excessive pleasantries. The front lines need every bit of strength, especially strong people like you. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned and strode toward the back of the outpost. The energy fluctuations in that direction were even more chaotic, and teeth-grinding shrieks could be faintly heard. The massive dusk noir silently floated behind him. Its enormous body radiated a heavy, oppressive presence that made the surrounding air feel thick. Kairos stepped forward to follow. Jengar floated curiously at his side, his crimson eyes darting around as he observed the tense, dangerous atmosphere within the outpost. Chandelure pulled back its earlier intensity, its ghostly red flames burning quietly, looking just like ordinary candlelight. Yet even in this state, it still drew sidelong glances from passing night watchers, who instinctively cleared a path. The road to the real front lines wasn't long, yet it felt like crossing between two worlds. The busy but orderly interior of the outpost was instantly replaced by noise and chaos after passing through a heavy metal gate covered in purple runes. The energy turbulence in the air was even more violent, the wind carrying the smell of gunsmoke, burning, and the characteristic cold of ghost-type energy. In the distance, the explosive sounds of energy collisions and the sharp, piercing shrieks of ghost Pokémon rose and fell endlessly. Pharaoh walked quickly while explaining, his tone heavy. See that? This is the Ghost World's battlefield. He stopped, his gaze sweeping over the chaotic area ahead. For hundreds of years, generation after generation, we've taken root here, bled here, died here, just barely holding this line to keep the Ghost World's problems from spilling into reality. He pointed to the night watchers wearing dark gray or black uniforms around them. Those people looked exhausted, all accompanied by powerful ghost-type Pokémon. Anyone who can stand firm here is no pushover, but your strength is really something. Even among the entire ghost world, you'd be considered pretty high tier. I genuinely respect that. Kairos's gaze swept over those night watchers with steady presences and disciplined bearing, and the ghost-type partners of various forms and powerful auras beside them. Miss Magius, Dusk Noir. There were even several Dusclops with particularly cold auras, and a fairly large Froslass. Their strength all started at mid-tier elite level at minimum. Kairos immediately understood. The guy's words had sounded like praise at first, but those 4 critical words pretty high tier had caught his attention. No wonder Pharaoh's expression was more surprised than shocked when he saw Chandelure. Although elite trainers in this world weren't as rare as in the original games, and there were plenty of elite-level trainers around, they were still considered capable of running a region. Yet here, they were only pretty high tier. This realization gave him more insight into the ghost world's strength. Pharaoh glanced sideways at Kairos, his eyes carrying a hint of poorly hidden curiosity. To be honest, Mr. Kairos, I'm really curious how you managed to train your ghost-type partners to this level. He paused, then continued. Even in the ghost world, where resources are naturally abundant, I've never seen anyone with elite-level ghost Pokémon at your age. As for that Gengar, although it's not elite level, I can also tell it's really strong. As someone from the ghost world, he could tell at a glance what was special about Kairos's 2 Pokémon. He couldn't exactly tell the truth and say he'd eaten his way to this level with candies. His footsteps didn't stop, and he simply gave a casual answer. Lucky encounters with some special opportunities. His answer was vague, but his thoughts turned to the information revealed in Pharaoh's words. Elite level was only pretty high tier here? Then what was truly top tier? It should be champion level, right? How strong is your most powerful force? Kairos's voice carried just the right amount of curiosity, his gaze still focused on the chaotic outline of the battlefield ahead. The nasty scar on Pharaoh's face seemed to move with his expression, and his tone carried more reverence. Deep within the ghost world stand 3 soul-suppressing towers, guarded by 3 realm masters. Each realm master is a true existence standing at the peak of ghost types. Their main partners have unimaginable strength. At this point, Pharaoh paused, as if weighing his words, and finally said with certainty. Especially the strongest, Realm Master Will. They say if Master Will went all out, even facing both the Kanto and Home League champions at the same time, he might not lose. Fighting both Lance and Steven at once? Kairos raised an eyebrow. That powerful? Champions represented the peak of a region's trainer strength, and both Lance and Steven were truly formidable. Could this Realm Master who never appeared in the original games really be that strong? If what Pharaoh said was true. A thought almost instantly formed in his mind. Special character. Promote the game. Emotion threshold. Extra rewards. A perfect route clearly emerged. Promoting the game to important characters unlocked higher emotion thresholds and better rewards. This was already well established, right? This Realm Master Will was undoubtedly an extremely special and powerful character. If he could promote the game to him, what kind of rewards would that unlock? Kairos's lips immediately curved upward. Based on previous experience, the character abilities and emotion threshold rewards were often related to the character's own traits. Will was a peak trainer specializing in ghost types, and of his current 3 Pokémon, both Gengar and Chandelure were ghost types. If he could get ghost type related abilities, that would be a perfect professional match. Wouldn't that be perfect? Just as Kairos was rapidly thinking about promoting the game to Will, Pharaoh had already led him through the final barrier formed by massive rocks. The scene before them opened up dramatically, instantly pulling Kairos back from his thoughts to reality. This was an enormous canyon, as if torn open by some tremendous force. On both sides were steep rock walls with an ominous purple-black sheen. At the canyon's far end, space looked bizarrely distorted, with grey mist churning as if connecting to another, even more frenzied world. And on this relatively open valley floor, fierce battle was underway. Night Watchers numbering several times more than at the third outpost, along with many people in various outfits clearly from different factions, were commanding their respective Pokémon in combat against Ghost-type Pokémon continuously pouring out from deep within the canyon. With a single glance, Kairos saw trainers in League Standard combat uniforms, well-equipped rough-looking bounty hunters, and quite a few independent trainers with unique auras and diverse Pokémon around them. Their power levels varied greatly, but were generally around gym leader level. In the outside world, this would already be a serious force. Yet right now, they were like rocks in a stream, desperately trying to hold back the raging tide. The battlefield was brutal. Chapter 274 Where did you just say you were going? The ground was torn up and uneven. Scorch marks and frost from clashing energy attacks scarred the surface. Broken rocks were scattered everywhere, and in some places, the stone had been eaten away by lingering ghost-type energy. The air was chaos itself. Pokémon roared. Trainers shouted commands. The wounded cried out. Ghost types let out shrill, hair-raising screams. The smell of blood and burning hung so thick that even Kairos couldn't help frowning. Pharaoh took a deep breath and stepped forward, ready to introduce Kairos to a few nearby squad leaders. Then everything changed. At the far end of the canyon, the warped space began to ripple like boiling water. A violent energy shockwave burst outward, sweeping through like a tidal wave, even more unstable and destructive than before. Woohoo! A piercing alarm echoed across the canyon. It was the highest level alert. A second surge of the ghost world tide. Damn it! Another big wave incoming. A booming voice roared across the battlefield. All units, maximum alert. Sirens blared. Pokémon roared in response. From the churning grey mist deep in the canyon, ghost types poured out like a collapsed dam. There were more of them than before, their forms even more twisted and grotesque. The red glow in their eyes was so intense it looked almost solid. Haunter, Dusclops, Misdreavus, Dryfluon, Bayonet. Even several massive Drifblim and Trevenant. They surged forward in a frenzy, slamming into the already strained defensive line. And within this wave, something new appeared. Strands of dark mist seeped out from the canyon depths, writhing like countless living black snakes. The mist seemed aware. It avoided humans and their Pokémon entirely, slipping past them to coil around the frenzied ghost types that had emerged from the ghost world. The moment the mist touched them, it either fused into their bodies or wrapped around them like something alive. The effect was immediate. The wild red light in their eyes flared brighter. Their auras climbed steadily, as if they'd been injected with something. A Dusclops that had been at elite level suddenly absorbed a thick strand of mist. Its body swelled, its shrieks grew sharper, and its power spiked to nearly Elite 4 Challenger level. It's those damn things! A Nightwatch member shouted. They're getting stronger again. The pressure on the defensive line skyrocketed. Trainers who had barely been holding on were suddenly pushed to the brink. A Drifblim enhanced by the dark mist twisted into a sinister grin. It tore open a gap in the encirclement, its shadow claw slicing toward an Alliance trainer. Dusk Noir! Pharaoh roared. The massive Dusk Noir at his side was already moving. Despite its size, it shot forward with shocking speed, planting itself in front of the endangered trainer. Its enormous arm swung out, dragging a swirling black vortex that collided head-on with the Drifblim's shadow claw. Boom! Shadow energy exploded outward. The Drifblim was blasted back, but a deep claw mark now scarred Dusk Noir's arm. Wisps of dark energy clung stubbornly to the wound. Jengar, Confuse Ray. Chandelure, Wide Area Will-O-Wisp. Kairos's voice cut cleanly through the chaos as he stepped into the fight. Jengar let out a cold laugh, crimson pupils blazing. Dozens of eerie light orbs scattered forward like sparks, striking the charging ghost types with pinpoint accuracy. Those hit by Confuse Ray immediately lost coordination. Some spun in place. Others turned on their own allies. The advancing wave faltered. Chandelure's ghostly red flames flared high. Dozens of chilling fire wisps drifted outward in a wide fan. This wasn't precise crowd control. This was area denial. Sizzle. Whoosh. The frenzied ghost types ignited like dry brush. Haunter or Dryfluon, it didn't matter. Their bodies were instantly wrapped in ghostly red fire. The weaker ones collapsed almost immediately. Those strengthened by the dark mist screamed as the mist around them churned violently, trying to resist the flames. It didn't work. Under sustained burning, the mist thinned rapidly and finally dissipated. Stripped of the enhancement, their auras dropped sharply. Soon after, they too were overwhelmed by the Will-O-Wisp and lost the ability to fight. Kairos's intervention had an immediate impact. Within dozens of meters in front of him, the charging tide of ghost types had been forcibly cleared. For a split second, the battlefield seemed to freeze. So strong. Who is that? Reinforcements from the third outpost? Captain Pharaoh brought him. Shocked voices rang out. Nightwatch members and Alliance trainers alike turned toward the young man standing beside Pharaoh. His expression was calm. A chandelier wreathed in ghostly red flames floated at his side, along with a noticeably larger-than-average Jengar. Pharaoh let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He had blocked the drift blim earlier, but he knew the truth. Against a wave like that, especially with the dark mist amplifying them, he and Dusk Noir alone couldn't have turned the tide. Kairos had changed everything. "Don't just stand there!" someone shouted, raising an arm. "Now's our chance! Counterattack! Push them back!" Morale surged. With Kairos holding the line and Pharaoh coordinating, the trainers rallied. Pokémon launched attack after attack. Brilliant flashes of moves lit up the canyon again, and the thunder of clashing energy grew louder. This time, the momentum shifted. With Kairos supporting them, the defense flowed far more smoothly. Jengar moved like an assassin in the shadows, using Confuse Ray to shatter enemy formations and Shadow Ball to pick off stragglers. Chandelure functioned like a living artillery piece. Its ghostly flames formed walls of fire to block advances and condensed into waves of will-o-wisp to sweep entire areas clean. Under this pressure, the wave of frenzied ghost types was gradually driven back. The survivors shrieked as they retreated into the warped space deep within the canyon. When the final haunter fell to a flamethrower, silence briefly descended. Only heavy breathing remained, along with the low groans of exhausted Pokémon and injured trainers. Many people sank to the ground, even veteran Nightwatch members. Their faces carried that hollow, stunned look that came after surviving something they shouldn't have. Based on past experience, a secondary surge like that would have cost them dearly. With the strange mist in play, casualties were usually inevitable. But this time was different. Because of the young man's intervention, they had held the line. Losses were far lighter than anyone had expected. Grateful eyes turned toward Kairos. Thank you." The Alliance trainer who had nearly been ambushed forced himself to stand and bowed deeply, his voice still shaking. "Thank you for saving me." Several Nightwatch squad leaders approached and saluted him solemnly, their expressions filled with respect. "Man, that was insane." A blood-covered bounty hunter grinned, giving Kairos a thumbs up. "Those moves were incredible." Kairos shook his head lightly. "No need," he said calmly. "You're the ones holding this place, keeping these frenzied Pokémon from reaching the cities. You're protecting ordinary people. I should be thanking you." His gaze swept over the exhausted, wounded trainers still standing their posts. No matter the world, people like this were indispensable. His words struck home. The Nightwatch members and Alliance trainers looked at him differently now. Kairos turned his attention toward the canyon depths, where grey mist and traces of dark vapor still lingered. He gestured toward the drifting black mist. "What do you know about that?" "It only targets ghost types from the ghost world. It doesn't affect us at all." An older Nightwatch member followed his gaze, concern etched deep into his face. "You noticed it too. We call it soul-eroding mist." He sighed heavily. "It seeps out from the depths whenever the ghost world tide erupts. It gets thicker every time. Like you saw, it only approaches the frenzied Pokémon and seems to deliberately avoid us. Ghost types that merge with it become even more violent. Their power jumps significantly, and they're much harder to handle. We've tried everything: energy bombardment, barriers, isolation. Nothing works very well." He shook his head, frustration evident in his eyes. "All we know is that it seems tied to the tide itself. Maybe it's a manifestation of that chaotic energy. What it really is, how to deal with it. I've been guarding this place for decades and still don't have the answer." Kairos frowned. Even the veterans stationed here long-term knew so little. He glanced at his system interface. It offered only vague information such as high-concentration pollution source. Not surprising. His system wasn't built for detailed environmental analysis. Pharaoh walked back over after arranging emergency treatment for the wounded. His expression was intense. "Mr. Kairos. Thank goodness you stepped in. If you hadn't acted when you did, we would have taken serious losses today." He clapped Kairos on the shoulder, unable to hide his emotion. "On behalf of everyone here, thank you." Without waiting for a reply, he continued. "Your strength speaks for itself. This ghost world tide has only just begun. We don't know how many more waves are coming, and the pressure deeper inside will only increase. We're stretched thin, especially when it comes to high-level fighters. Would you consider staying and helping us hold this sector for a while? Just until we get through the worst of this surge. The Nightwatch Fortress will compensate you properly. Whatever resources or payment you need, as long as our Ghost World division can provide it, it's yours. He looked at Kairos with open anticipation. Having someone capable of clearing the field against Elite 4 level ghost types would be an enormous boost. It could mean the difference between holding the line and collapsing. Kairos slowly shook his head. His eyes drifted past Pharaoh toward the depths of the canyon, where the dark radiance churned and the soul-eroding mist still lingered. I'm sorry. I came here for something else. I can't stay. The eagerness on Pharaoh's face froze, giving way to disappointment. He opened his mouth to argue, but Kairos raised a hand to stop him. In Kairos's vision, the map hovering before him suddenly flashed. An enormous red dot had appeared. It sat at the very core of the Ghost World's deepest zone. The red dot pulsed like a heartbeat. With each pulse, it absorbed countless tiny points of chaotic energy around it, swelling at an alarming rate. This wasn't a natural energy node. It wasn't an ordinary Pokémon nest. Kairos stared at it for several seconds. He was nearly certain. That red dot was the core of the Ghost World tide eruption. If he could eliminate it, or at least understand what it was, the chaos here might be resolved at its source. He dismissed the interface and looked back at Pharaoh. If I'm going to head into the Ghost World's interior, I need some information. How do I get there? And what key dangers should I watch out for along the way? Pharaoh went completely still. He had assumed Kairos wanted to search for resources or capture rare ghost types in the outer zones. He hadn't expected this. This young man wasn't interested in the outskirts. He was aiming straight for the core. Around them, Nightwatch members and Alliance trainers who overheard the question turned to stare at Kairos as if he had just announced he planned to walk into a volcano. Comment. To comment. Vote. Chapter 275, 276, The Unreachable Destination, The Missing Realm Lord? This was the Ghost World's depths. Danger saturated the very air. Only fools wandered in unprepared. Iron Rock snapped back to his senses, his face going pale. He waved his hands frantically, voice rising several octaves. No way. Bro, absolutely not. He took a deep breath and explained urgently, even our strongest won't venture deep into that area carelessly. Frenzied ghost-type Pokémon pack the space beyond imagination. Elite 4 trainers? Forget it. Even champion-level powerhouses would barely escape alive if thousands of crazed ghosts surrounded them. They might even die in there. The environment is brutal. Spatial rifts everywhere. Energy turbulence that can tear a person to shreds. You can't just force your way through with strength alone. And this is during a Ghost World tide. If you go in now, you'll definitely die. Kairos furrowed his brow after hearing Iron Rock's explanation. A headache was coming on. This was a major problem. Under normal circumstances, he could have Jengar hide him in its shadow and carry him through difficult terrain. Jengar had demonstrated this ability before. Theoretically, it could merge him into shadows for long-distance movement. But this was the Ghost World's depths, crawling with ghost-type Pokémon everywhere. Everyone here played with shadows and psychic powers. Jengar hiding him might fool the naked eye, but not those wild ghost types with their keen senses and sharp perception. Among ghost types, Jengar carrying a living human would stand out like a beacon. The frenzied Pokémon would almost certainly discover them. Once discovered and surrounded in such narrow, unfamiliar terrain, they would be walking into a death trap. He could not force his way through either. 2 fists could not defeat 4 hands. Even with Chandelure and Jengar, dealing with all the ghosts inside would be impossible. Moreover, the Ho-Oh Feather's charge had already run out. Kairos calculated for a moment. Forcing through was definitely out. That way led to suicide. How about surveying the perimeter first to assess the situation? After all, this was already the boundary between the 2 areas, not too far from the core region. Perhaps he could find clues at the edges, or discover patterns in how that red dot influenced the outside world. That way he could formulate a solid plan. Kairos made up his mind. He would not rush deep. Instead, he would conduct reconnaissance around the periphery. On the other side of the ghost world, in a grand and sinister fortress at its core, the atmosphere was suffocating. The massive structure was built entirely of black stone. Ancient runes carved into its walls emanated an eerie purple glow. In the top-floor conference hall, a group of black-robed figures had gathered. At the far end of the long table sat two figures with terrifyingly powerful auras, a man and a woman. Even sitting quietly, the pressure emanating from them could suffocate ordinary people. These were two of the Ghost World lineage's realm lords. Aside from the strongest one, Will, they held the highest power ruling the Ghost World. The long table was filled with commanders responsible for various defense zones and senior night watchers. Exhaustion and anxiety marked their faces. Each discussed the recent Ghost World Tide situation in hushed voices. Bad news kept coming. The Ghost Tide was becoming increasingly violent, erupting more frequently and with greater intensity. Many defense zones were already on the verge of collapse. Casualty numbers climbed constantly. Supplies were being consumed at a frightening rate. If this continued, the collapse of the defensive lines was only a matter of time. A burly man wearing sunglasses spoke in a deep voice, breaking the hall's clamor. "Everyone, listen to me." He looked around, his tone heavy. The League has learned of the situation here and dispatched reinforcements. They do not usually interfere in Ghost World internal affairs, but this incident has gotten too serious. If the Ghost World completely loses control, the real world will also be affected. The League cannot just sit by and watch. Hearing about the League's reinforcements, the people below relaxed slightly. Then they fell into even deeper concern. The League's support might relieve some pressure, but can it really solve this problem? Yes, this Ghost World Tide is too strange. Completely different from before. The lean, sharp-eyed female realm lord sitting on the other side suddenly spoke up. She ignored the matter of League support and asked a question that made everyone's hearts tighten. "Where did Will go? Does anyone know?" The hall fell instantly silent. Deathly silent. Everyone's gazes became evasive. No one dared to respond. Will was the strongest existence in the Ghost World lineage, their spiritual pillar and the key force in dealing with this Ghost World Tide. But from when the tide began intensifying until now, Will had vanished like vapor. No one had seen his shadow. The lean realm lord's eyes swept around like a viper's. No one knows where Will went. At such a critical moment, for Will to be absent was too abnormal. The commanders exchanged glances. In the end, they could only shake their heads helplessly. They did not know. After a long while, an elderly commander spoke up tremblingly, muttering quietly. "Lord Realm Master, the last time Lord Will appeared was a few days ago. He said he was going to investigate something in the deepest part of the Ghost World. He never sent back any message." This statement made the atmosphere even more oppressive. The strongest realm lord was missing. The Ghost World Tide was out of control. League reinforcements were still on the way. Each of these matters pressed down on everyone, creating an unprecedented chill. Kairos took one last look at the chaotic battlefield behind him, at the undisguised worry and disappointment on Iron Rock's face. He understood Iron Rock's concerns. This defensive line needed help now. Combat power like his could instantly clear the field. But he slowly shook his head. His gaze had already passed over those exhausted but still standing figures, looking toward the area deep in the canyon. That place churned with ominous grey fog and wisps of strange black energy. "I'll be going first then." He hesitated no longer. Taking Jengar and Chandelure with him, he turned and stepped into that area where the energy was even more violent, where howls seemed to ring directly in his ears. Iron Rock watched his disappearing figure and let out a heavy sigh. The scars on his face seemed to deepen further. The pressure on the defensive line was like a mountain now. He could not afford to think too much. He immediately turned back to reorganizing the troops. The gazes from the surrounding night watchers and league trainers were complex. They contained admiration, incomprehension, and worry about watching a brave warrior walk toward an unknown abyss. They hoped he would not actually run deep into the Ghost World. Stepping across that twisted spatial boundary, the clamor behind him was cut off. The world before his eyes filled instantly with grey fog. The air was bone-chillingly cold. The ground beneath his feet was uneven, covered with scorch marks and frost traces left by energy explosions. He looked up. There was still no concept of sky here. Only purple-black rock walls that seemed ready to collapse at any moment. Spatial rifts flickered and twisted between the walls. The number of frenzied ghosts was clearly much higher than at the front lines. Haunters, Dustloops, Misdreavus, they were like swarms of headless flies. Their crimson eyes scanned everywhere, emitting meaningless shrieks. They would even tear at each other without warning. Their states were very abnormal, but their strength was not as great as those at the front lines. Jengar floated nervously at Kairos's side. Its crimson eyes vigilantly scanned the surroundings. Its body unconsciously moved closer to Kairos. It was starting to regret coming back with Kairos now. Chandelure floated quietly. Its ghostly red flames burned steadily, dispelling the cold in a small area around them. The steady flame invisibly made those frenzied creatures instinctively give them a wider berth. Have either of you encountered this kind of situation before when you were in the ghost world? Kairos seemed to remember something. He turned to ask his two ghost world natives. Gehi. Wu. Both Pokémon nodded, giving affirmative answers. But Jengar also shook its head. It had happened before, but never this severe. I see. Understood. Kairos nodded thoughtfully. He did not rush deeper. He found a relatively hidden corner and sat down. Chandelure floated over, its candle light brightening slightly. The wisps of black fog in the surroundings hissed faintly as if meeting their nemesis. They quickly dissolved and retreated, clearing out a small clean space. Kairos planned to observe this fog. He needed to confirm the anomaly he had discovered at the front lines. He gave a signal. Jengar and Chandelure immediately understood his meaning. Jengar deliberately floated to the edge of Chandelure's purification range, exposing itself to the slowly flowing soul-eroding fog. Almost simultaneously, those black fog masses seemed to awaken. They were no longer like at the front lines, only interested in frenzied wild ghosts. Instead, like sharks smelling blood, they twisted excitedly and coiled toward Jengar. A few wisps even tried to drill into Jengar's body. Jengar immediately made an uncomfortable sound. Shadow energy surged across its body as it swatted away those black mists like brushing off dust. The dispersed black fog circled unwillingly, seemingly still looking for an opportunity. Kairos's eyes sharpened. He had his answer. As expected. When the ghost world tide erupted and intense battles raged at the front lines, this soul-eroding fog only favored those frenzied native ghosts surging from the ghost world's depths. It enhanced their strength. But here in this relatively rear area, where the ghost world tide's shockwave was weaker, during non-eruption core periods, this fog became indiscriminate. It began trying to corrode all ghost-type Pokémon without distinction. This further confirmed that the soul-eroding fog's activity was closely tied to fluctuations from the core region. Just as he sorted out this line of thinking and prepared to continue forward, a gaze emerged from the shadows to his side and rear. Kairos's body instantly tensed. But he did not immediately assume an attacking posture. Chandelure's ghostly red flames silently rose an inch higher, emanating an even colder presence. Jengar also quietly merged into the shadow at Kairos's feet, leaving only its crimson eyes vigilantly watching that direction. A figure peeled away from the rock itself, appearing silently like something emerging from stone. The person was gaunt and withered, with sunken eye sockets. Their face was carved with ravines of weathering and exhaustion, even carrying a trace of madness from long-term environmental erosion that was hard to detect. They wore an extremely tattered, ancient-styled night watcher uniform that looked like it had been pulled from a museum. There was no insignia. Most eye-catching was the Pokémon beside them, a Trevenant. Its body was a full size larger than those encountered on the battlefield earlier. Its dark purple wooden torso had a metallic sheen. Two stable, cold red lights burned in its hollow eye sockets. The ghost-type energy waves it emanated were thick and solid, at least mid-tier Elite 4 level. Its massive tree claws rested lightly on the ground. Completely silent. New face. The withered man spoke, his voice hoarse as sandpaper scraping. Got guts coming to this god-forsaken place alone. Looking to be an extra meal for those lunatics. Kairos turned around, calmly meeting the other's cloudy gaze. I'm here to find the source of the ghost world tide. Do you have any suggestions, Senior? He was brief and to the point. The source. The withered man sneered. That place will kill you. Countless people stronger than you have tried to go in and died. Who do you think you are? His cloudy eyes stared fixedly at Kairos, as if trying to find fear on his face. But Kairos's heart stirred instead. The other's tone carried a familiarity with the core region. Unaffected by the mockery, he posed the key question directly. You have a way to get in. The withered man's cloudy eyeballs rolled, sweeping over the powerfully auric chandelure beside Kairos, then glancing at the obviously unusual shadow at Kairos's feet. He had clearly sensed Jengar's presence. A way. He drew out the word. Yes. An old route. An inspection path the realm lords used years ago. Half collapsed. The soul-eroding fog is thin there. It can bypass the craziest of those Pokémon and reach the core region's location. He extended a finger like a withered branch, fingernails filled with black dirt. He pointed toward the direction deeper in the canyon where energy distortion was most severe. But there is a condition. Kairos was not surprised. He asked directly. Money. The withered man seemed to hear the biggest joke. He grinned, revealing several yellowed and blackened teeth. What do I need that for? What use is that thing in the ghost world's depths? He patted the hard trunk of the Trevenant beside him, his voice hoarse. I want something that can feed it. His gaze burned as he stared at Kairos, especially at Chandelure and that Jengar. I see you've raised your Chandelure and Jengar quite well. You must have good stuff on you. Some rare resource? Or do you have a secret formula for cultivating them? Chapter 276 A Fair Trade, Hidden Passage, and Murals. What he coveted was clearly the resources or experience that allowed Kairos to cultivate such powerful ghost-type Pokémon. After all, for someone of this age to have two such Pokémon by his side, there were only two possibilities. 1. These weren't his Pokémon, he simply had a prestigious background that allowed him to borrow others' Pokémon. 2. He had trained them himself. However, there was an obvious bond between Jengar, Chandelure, and the young man before him, a connection unique to trainers and their ghost Pokémon. He could sense it. In other words, this young man had cultivated these two Pokémon at such an age. If it weren't for their similar strength levels, he might have just attacked directly. Hearing this, Kairos felt somewhat speechless. Ghost-type resources? He'd never even seen such things, let alone possessed them. As for secrets, he'd never actually trained Jengar and Chandelure in any formal way. That said, what the other party wanted, he did actually have something. His mind racing, he pretended to rummage through the backpack behind him while actually pulling out from his system space a peculiarly packaged candy that glowed with a soft blue light. Naturally, it was an old friend, a rare candy. I don't have any secrets, Kairos said, spreading his palm to reveal the candy. But this will definitely benefit it. The gaunt man squinted suspiciously, his withered fingers carefully picking up the candy. He sniffed it under his nose, then with a gesture, a faint black energy surged out, testing the candy. He found no signs of traps or poison. He hesitantly glanced at the Trevenant beside him. The red lights in Trevenant's hollow eye sockets flickered slightly. It seemed to sense an extremely pure, tempting energy wave from the candy and instinctively extended a vine. The gaunt man ultimately tossed the candy over. Trevenant's vine nimbly caught the candy and absorbed it into its body without hesitation. The next moment, a shocking scene unfolded. Whoom! A powerful purple-black light suddenly erupted from within Trevenant. Its dark purple wooden body emitted tooth-grinding creaking sounds, as if parched earth had instantly absorbed water. It visibly expanded, becoming more robust and resilient. A ghost-type energy wave far more powerful than before surged outward like a tidal wave. The red lights in Trevenant's hollow eye sockets blazed like searchlights as it raised its head and let out a low, satisfied yet surprised roar. Its aura instantly broke through its previous bottleneck, firmly stepping into the high tier of Elite Four level. The mockery, doubt, and greed on the gaunt man's face froze instantly, replaced by extreme shock and disbelief. His mouth gaped wide enough to fit a duck egg, his eyeballs nearly popping out, his withered body trembling violently from excitement. What the hell is this thing? He shrieked, his voice cracking. One piece, and it broke through. Where did you get this? He stared at Kairos with eyes full of horror and incomprehensible fervor. Kairos had already prepared his explanation, his face still showing no ripples. It's a special item called a rare candy. I got it as a reward from playing a game called Pokémon Ultimate Emerald. He explained in a flat tone. A game? A reward? The shock on the gaunt man's face instantly vanished, replaced by confusion. Bullshit! He exclaimed, spittle flying. What kind of game gives something like this as a reward in real life? Hearing this, Kairos was momentarily stunned. The game is very popular. You haven't heard of it? The man curled his lip. How would I know? Never heard of it. The ghost world has been half isolated from those weaklings' territory for 800 damn years. Some outposts occasionally pass in broken news, and I don't even know if the champion has changed, let alone whatever game you're talking about. He scoffed, his tone filled with unfamiliarity toward the outside world and a barely perceptible disdain. Kairos suddenly understood. So that's it. Deep in the ghost world, especially for those who struggled on the edge of life and death like savages, they were almost completely cut off from outside information. The Nightwatch higher UPS might know about Alliance support, but even a globally popular gaming craze was completely unknown to them. No wonder he'd received such a task. At the same time, although the origin of the rare candy was utterly bizarre, Trevenant's real, earth-shattering transformation was right before his eyes. The gaunt man had to accept it whether he believed it or not. Looking at Trevenant beside him, whose aura had strengthened considerably, the greed in his eyes nearly materialized. "Kid," he panted heavily. "I don't care if you stole this candy, robbed it, or if it really popped out of some damn game, this thing definitely has great use." He stared fixedly at Kairos. "Got any more? Give me a few more. I'll tell you where that route is right away, how about it?" He extended his withered hand, palm up, full of eager desire. Kairos decisively shook his head. "This kind of resource is extremely rare. I only have a little myself, otherwise would I be at this level of strength? With this effect, one candy for one route is very fair." The rare candies he currently had all had level restrictions for use. The ones he could give away didn't, but there really weren't many left. Besides, if he really let this man increase his strength, whether he could even leave here would be questionable. He wasn't an idiot. The gaunt man stared at Kairos, his eyes flashing viciously several times. His greedy nature made him desperately desire more candies, but the calm and boundaries Kairos displayed, along with the chandelier with its deep, cold aura and the Jengar hidden in his shadow, made him hesitate. Finally, he made his decision. "Fine, stingy kid." He curled his lip. "One piece it is. Follow me." Without further words, he turned and plunged into the nearby labyrinth of jagged rocks and chaotic energy currents with Trevenant, whose strength had greatly increased and whose steps seemed heavier. Kairos immediately followed. Chandelier floated at his side, its ghostly red flame steadily dispelling the soul-eroding mist trying to approach. Jengar completely merged into Kairos's shadow, leaving only basic perception. The gaunt man was obviously intimately familiar with this area, navigating through the maze like a mole. He led Kairos through 7 or 8 turns, avoiding several areas where energy currents were particularly violent and spatial rifts dense. They even narrowly passed along the edge of several wandering Elite 4-level frenzied Mismagius's perception ranges. Finally, they stopped before a massive rock wall covered in thick dark green moss. On the wall's surface, one could vaguely see some long blurred, primitively lined runic carvings. The gaunt man motioned for Kairos to stop. He walked to the wall and uttered several extremely obscure, strangely pronounced syllables, or perhaps they weren't human language at all. Simultaneously, Trevenant beside him extended a thick vine. Its tip glowed with dark purple light and gently touched an inconspicuous, moss half-hidden groove on the wall. Whoom! A slight vibration came. On the rock wall, a nearly invisible vertical crack, only finger-width wide, silently slid open to both sides, revealing a passageway barely wide enough for one person that sloped downward. The passage's inner walls were unusually smooth, clearly artificially polished. It exuded the scent of accumulated dust over many years, along with a soul-eroding mist presence much thinner than outside, but still existing. The gaunt man pointed at this deep entrance that seemed to lead toward the Earth's core, his tone carrying impatience and detachment. "This is it." He stepped aside, making way. "Follow this path, keep going down, don't turn. At the end, there's an abandoned observation platform. It's not far from where you want to go." He emphasized, "Remember, inside isn't safe either. Just slightly better than those crazy piles on the main road outside. The space isn't stable either. And." He stepped back, retreating with Trevenant into the shadows of nearby rocks, his voice carrying a hint of schadenfreude and distance. "If you want to go, go yourself. Even if you give me more candy, don't expect me to accompany you inside to die." Having obtained the candy, the transaction was complete. He clearly had no intention of any further entanglement. Kairos ignored his attitude, only taking one last look at the deep passage entrance, then glancing toward where the gaunt man had disappeared. Without any hesitation, he took a deep breath, bent down, and squeezed into the narrow passage. As soon as he entered, the suffocating soul-eroding mist and howling wind outside vanished instantly, as if someone had pressed a mute button. Inside the passage was unnervingly quiet, with only the extremely faint footsteps and breathing of him and his two Pokémon. There was no black fog here. This surprised Kairos somewhat. He'd originally thought this route to the Ghost World's depths would have an even worse environment than the rocky caverns outside, but unexpectedly, it was excessively clean. Though the air still carried that accumulated dust smell, there was no skin-stinging corrosive sensation. Chandelure floated ahead, its ghostly red flames illuminating the surroundings considerably. Kairos reached out to touch the passage's inner wall. It felt icy cold and unusually smooth. This clearly wasn't a naturally formed cave, but bore traces of artificial excavation and polishing. To create such a refined passage in the Ghost World's depths, filled with violent chaotic energy currents, those people, or those Pokémon, from the past must have been extraordinarily powerful. He continued forward. The ground beneath his feet was as smooth as a giant stone slab. After walking for about several minutes, the space ahead became slightly more spacious. Kairos stopped because he discovered something appearing on both smooth stone walls. Were these murals? These murals were carved very delicately. Although they'd been eroded by who knows how many years and the lines had become somewhat blurred, under Chandelure's light, one could still clearly discern what was depicted. Kairos moved closer, carefully examining the nearest one. The painting showed a twisted world where the sky was shattered and the earth looked as if something had forcibly torn it apart. Countless purple-black lightning bolts wandered through the rifts. At the painting's very center was a massive, strangely formed creature. The creature had 6 thick legs, its body surrounded by golden halos. The wings on its back resembled some kind of thorny brambles or sharp blades formed from metal, giving an extremely fierce yet majestic impression. Seeing this familiar figure, Kairos suddenly froze. This form, this aura, even painted on a wall, it radiated an oppressive force that made one want to submit, but Kairos didn't feel anything particular. Because this was an old friend, Giratina. He absolutely couldn't be mistaken. Though the painting was somewhat abstract, as the ruler of the distortion world, this legendary Pokémon's image was far too distinctive. Although this mural only depicted its profile and seemed incomplete, as if someone had torn away half from the middle, that unique quality couldn't be concealed. So the Ghost World's origins are related to Giratina? Kairos pondered silently. This was indeed a new discovery. Although there was plenty of online information saying the Ghost World was where Ghost-type Pokémon gathered, the specific cause had always been vague. He hadn't expected to see Giratina's mural here. Could it be that the Ghost World was actually a projection of the distortion world in the real world, or that Giratina had once descended here, leaving behind some power that formed the Ghost World? Just as he was staring intently at the mural, a crisp notification suddenly rang in his mind. Ding! The system panel popped up, a line of prominent text flashing on it. Legendary Pokémon Ruin partial area detected, key information fragment discovered, recording in progress. Recording progress 1%. As expected. A hint of surprise flashed through Kairos's eyes. The system's reaction was quite quick. It seemed this mural indeed contained considerable information, even belonging to a ruin of the Ghost Dragon. It's just that the recording progress was only 1%, indicating that although the mural mentioned Giratina, the information was still too sparse, or rather, too incomplete. He shook his head, preparing to continue forward to see what else lay ahead. After all, since this passage led to the core area, there must be more than just this one mural. Just as he was about to lift his foot, a voice suddenly came from behind him. Oh? I didn't expect anyone would still be interested in this thing. The voice was very calm, without any emotional fluctuation, like an old friend greeting him. But in this environment, this sudden voice still made the hairs on Kairos's back stand on end instantly. You should know, his current physique and reaction abilities had all been enhanced, yet even for him, the opponent's movement speed just now was too fast. When did the other party appear behind him? Chapter 277 The Shadow in the Passage, Lord of the Ghost World. Kairos spun around on instinct. His Pokémon reacted just as fast. Chandelure's flames surged higher. Jengar burst from the shadows and positioned itself protectively in front of Kairos, fangs bared, growling at the darkness behind them. When he saw who it was, Kairos relaxed slightly. His guard did not fully drop, though. A man in a grey trench coat stood not far away. He appeared to be in his 30s, with messy hair and a tired face from too many sleepless nights. Yet his eyes held unusual brightness, deep and penetrating, as if seeing straight through to your soul. No trace of energy came from this person. He seemed like an ordinary human. But Kairos knew better. Anyone who could appear silently behind him in the depths of the ghost world, as casually as taking a stroll, was no ordinary person. Relax, the man said, eyeing Kairos's battle-ready stance. A faint smile crossed his face. If I wanted to attack you, you would already be on the ground by the time you turned around. Kairos frowned but said nothing. He watched and waited. The other party would speak first. I'm Will, the man said, unbothered by Kairos's silence. The guardian of this place. Or perhaps you outsiders prefer to call me the Realm Master. Realm Master Will? Kairos's heart stirred. He had heard of this title. In a chaotic place like the Ghost World, a Realm Master stood at the absolute pinnacle. The Ghost World was not technically under League jurisdiction, but it had its own internal order. Several Realm Masters maintained that order. I'm Kairos, he replied evenly. I'm trying to reach the core area. I mean no harm. He did not hide his intentions. Lying to someone this powerful would be pointless and would only risk making an enemy. Besides, this person controlled this place. He must know everything about the core area. Perhaps Kairos could get some useful information from him. The core area. Will raised an eyebrow, surprise flashing in his eyes. Quite a few people have wanted to go there recently. But kid, I'd advise you to turn back. That place is not somewhere you want to be right now. I know it's dangerous, Kairos nodded. But I really do need to go there. Will studied Kairos for a few seconds, weighing his words. Then he suddenly laughed. Interesting. Stubborn one, aren't you? Will shook his head, hands in his pockets, gazing at the deep passage ahead. Honestly, I'd like to see what's happening in the core area too. The ghost world hasn't been peaceful lately, and the disturbances from the core are getting bigger and bigger. I'm worried myself. But unfortunately. He sighed and pointed ahead. This path is no longer passable. No longer passable? Kairos froze. The passage was clearly right there. It did not look collapsed or blocked. How could it not be passable? What do you mean? He asked. I mean there's someone, or rather something, blocking the way ahead, Will shrugged. And it's not blocked with stones or dirt. It's blocked in a way where you simply cannot get through. Will ignored Kairos's reaction and strode forward, passing him and heading deeper into the passage. Follow me. I'll show you. Kairos hesitated briefly, then followed. If the man was willing to show him, that meant no hostile intent, for now at least. Besides, Kairos was curious about what could stop even a realm master. They walked one after another through the passage for several dozen meters until they reached a corner. Will stopped there without turning, beckoning to Kairos. Watch closely. As his words fell, Will's aura suddenly changed. The previously lazy, casual air vanished instantly. It was replaced by pressure as heavy as a mountain. The pressure was not directed at Kairos, but even the tiny bit that leaked out made him feel as though a boulder pressed on his chest. Breathing became difficult. The sensation disappeared instantly thanks to Kairos's experience, but it had been there for a moment. Kairos made his judgment immediately. Champion-level trainer. Only a champion-level trainer could possess such an aura. As Will's aura exploded, a purple-black figure appeared beside him without warning. It was also a Jengar. But this Jengar was completely different from Kairos's. Its body was much larger. The purple-black glow surrounding it looked like concentrated ink. Its eyes no longer gleamed with mischief but with heart-chilling coldness. The moment it appeared, the temperature plummeted several degrees. The air seemed filled with cold laughter. Top champion level. Kairos instinctively glanced at his own Jengar cowering behind him, trembling. They were not even in the same league. Just the mental pressure from Will's Jengar standing there was enough to paralyze ordinary Elite 4 level Pokémon. This was probably a top champion level existence. Go! Will issued a calm command. The champion Jengar made no movement, only fixing its red eyes on a patch of shadow at the corner. The next moment, it vanished in a flash. Boom! A wave of energy erupted from the corner. Purple-black shadow balls poured out like rain, crashing forward. Black tendrils erupted from the shadows, tearing wildly at everything in their path. But a surprising scene unfolded. The shadow at the corner did not budge at all. It was not an ordinary shadow but more like a black wall. No matter how fierce the champion Jengar's attacks were, striking that shadow was like throwing stones into the sea, and not even a ripple appeared. The shadow stood there quietly, like a black hole, devouring everything. Will's brow furrowed. Shadow Ball? Dark Pulse. He muttered the names of several moves, clearly testing the limits of the defense. But no matter what move he used, the result was the same. The champion-level Jengar seemed to grow anxious. It let out a sharp roar as its entire body transformed into a purple streak of light, ramming directly into the shadow. This was its strongest strike. However, thud. A dull sound echoed. The champion Jengar was violently repelled, sliding several meters across the ground before stabilizing. The shadow still showed no change whatsoever. Will sighed and waved his hand to call Jengar back. See. He turned to look at Kairos. I've been trying for almost 10 minutes. No matter what, there's no way to get through. This shadow is incredibly tough. Strange. Kairos swallowed, staring at the shadow in disbelief. What kind of existence could make a top champion level Jengar suffer like this? And here's the thing, this is alive, Will said, his expression turning odd. I can feel it. It's not some mechanism or trap, but a living Pokémon. Its strength is probably above mine. Kairos understood. If even Will found it troublesome, this was a legendary level existence, maybe even a mythical beast. He casually opened his map interface, wanting to see if he could discover anything. Sure enough, just ahead of that corner, a conspicuous red dot appeared on the map. The dot flickered, glowing eerily. Kairos stared at it, his mind racing. If a champion-level Pokémon could not get through, the opponent's strength was at least peak champion level, or a legendary Pokémon at that tier. He considered the shadow's characteristics, able to manipulate shadows freely, body seemingly ghostly, difficult to damage with physical or energy attacks. Shadow-related Pokémon. Several names flashed through Kairos's mind. Suddenly, one name surfaced in his thoughts. It made sense. If it was that one. Whether it was or not, he would try first. Kairos took a deep breath and made his decision. Could I try? He looked at Will. Will looked at him with surprise, as if wondering if he had gone mad. You? Your two would face the same result. I don't necessarily need to fight, Kairos shook his head. Since it's alive, communication should be possible. I'd like to try. Will fell silent for a moment, then nodded and stepped aside. All right, give it a shot. We're out of other options anyway. But be careful. This thing seems to have a bad temper. Kairos nodded, straightened his clothes, and strode toward the shadow. As he approached, the shadow seemed to react. Its previously calm surface began to ripple slightly, as if sizing up this approaching intruder. Kairos could feel an icy gaze lock onto him. He did not retreat. He continued until he was only a few meters from the shadow before stopping. Hello. Kairos tentatively greeted it. The shadow froze. Clearly, it had not expected this human to communicate this way. It rippled more violently, then suddenly stood up from the ground. That was right, it stood up. The mass of shadow rapidly condensed, transforming into a humanoid creature. It wore a green hat on its head and a red scarf around its body. Something like a tail extended behind it. Its body remained black-purple, but that ghostly, intangible feeling had diminished considerably. It now carried a hint of playfulness and liveliness. Marshado. It really was it. Kairos's heart raced with excitement. His guess was correct. The mythical Pokémon Marshado. This Pokémon naturally lived in shadows. It could slip into anyone's shadow and possessed the ability to manipulate them. Moreover, its strength was formidable, even capable of confronting ordinary legendary Pokémon. Among mythical Pokémon, it was one of the less mascot-like existences. Most importantly, its appearance looked just like a shadow. It perfectly matched the characteristics of what he had seen. And if it really was Marshado, everything made sense. No wonder Will's Jengar could not damage it, because Marshado could freely move through shadows and even blend into them. Ordinary attacks simply could not hit its actual form. Will, beside him, was clearly shocked by the scene too. His eyes widened as he stared at this strange Pokémon that had suddenly appeared. What is this thing? I've never seen this kind of Pokémon before. Marshado paid no attention to Will. Its focus was entirely on Kairos. It circled around Kairos several times, nose constantly sniffing, as if searching for something. Strange, so strange. A childish yet somewhat weathered voice sounded directly in Kairos's mind. Mars Haddo had not spoken aloud but conveyed its meaning telepathically. You, why do you carry that lord's aura? That lord? Kairos froze. Who was the lord Mars Haddo mentioned? The next moment, he realized. Ho-Oh. Mars Haddo had some connection with Ho-Oh. To put it in lofty terms, it regarded Ho-Oh as a kind of faith or mentor. To put it bluntly, it was Ho-Oh's little fan. Kairos's heart stirred. He immediately pulled from his backpack the feather he had used once before but had not taken out since, the feather radiating a faint rainbow glow. The rainbow wing. The moment this feather appeared, Mars Shadow's reaction became intense. It abruptly stopped circling and stared fixedly at the feather. Its previously playful eyes instantly filled with extreme excitement and reverence. Its body trembled slightly, like a believer encountering their deity. This is... Mars Shadow's voice trembled. That lord's feather. It wanted to reach out and take it but did not dare. It only drew very close, carefully sensing the sacred aura from the feather. Do you know that lord? Mars Haddo suddenly looked up, staring intently into Kairos's eyes. Where is he? Why would he give you this feather? Have you met him? How is he now? It fired off a barrage of questions, anxiety written all over its face. Kairos shook his head. I don't know Ho-Oh, he said truthfully. This feather was something I obtained by chance. I don't know Ho-Oh's current situation either, nor where he is. Sorry about that. Obtained by chance? Mars Haddo froze. The light in its eyes instantly dimmed. It looked utterly disappointed. How could this be? I thought. It drooped there listlessly, like a deflated balloon. However, it soon looked up again, gazing at Kairos with a complex expression. Chapter 278 Power Beyond the Champion, Mars Shadow's Hidden Secret? No, that's not right. That Great One's feather isn't something just anyone can hold. Mars Haddo sized Kairos up from head to toe. If you hadn't been personally acknowledged by the Great One, that feather would have turned to ash the instant a mere mortal touched it. The fact that you are still holding it means, at the very least, the Great One doesn't reject you. You could even say he has a faint fondness for you. Kairos looked down at the feather in his hand, surprised. It worked like that? Did it actually have a will of its own? He had always assumed it was just a rare legendary item. He never imagined it would carry such an effect. Of course it does, Mars Haddo said proudly, puffing out its chest as if reading his thoughts. The Great One's feather is bestowed only upon those who are kind and pure of heart. If you harbored even the slightest malicious intent, it would already have crumbled into black ash. The fact that you can hold it proves your heart is clean. Kairos nodded thoughtfully. It seemed his character passed Ho-Oh's standards, at least. At that moment, Will, who had been left standing awkwardly to the side for quite some time, finally couldn't hold back anymore. Ahem. Will cleared his throat. You know this little guy? He pointed at Mars Haddo, curiosity plain on his face. As Lord of the Ghost World, a ghost-type Pokémon this powerful was something he'd never encountered. Kairos turned toward him. I didn't know it before. I just happened to possess something connected to someone it knows, so it sensed me. As he spoke, he put Ho-Oh's feather back into his bag. The moment the feather disappeared, Mars Haddo panicked. Hey! Don't put it away. Let me look at it again, just one more time. It hopped up, trying to reach Kairos's bag. Kairos ignored it, giving it only a faint glance. Mars Haddo pouted but reluctantly stopped. All right, you've seen the feather, Kairos said calmly. If you want another look later, maybe. But first, can you tell me why you are blocking our path? Mars Shadow's expression instantly turned serious. It floated to the center of the passage and barred the way. I'm doing this for your own good, it said, glancing between Kairos and Will, a note of warning in its voice. You have no idea what the core of the ghost world looks like right now. With your current strength, going in there would be suicide. That's why I stopped you. Will stepped forward. What exactly is happening deeper inside? I've been there before. It was dangerous, yes, but not to the point of certain death. Mars Haddo didn't even look at him, as if he were invisible. It acknowledged only Kairos, the one holding Ho-Oh's feather. Kairos repeated the question. What happened in the core zone? Mars Haddo turned to him, helplessness flickering in its red eyes. The one they sealed, has basically broken free. The air seemed to solidify. Will's face drained of color. What? Broken free from the seal? That's impossible. That was. He was cut off. Nothing is impossible, Mars Haddo said coldly. The seal has loosened to its limit. That thing's power is pouring out endlessly. The core area is practically his backyard now. Get within 100 meters, and you'll both become his lunch. Kairos frowned slightly. Mars Haddo wasn't prone to exaggeration. For a mythical Pokémon to call something suicide, was the situation truly that dire? How do you know so much? He asked. Have you gone inside? Mars Haddo's drifting body suddenly stiffened. It turned, red eyes fixed on him, wearing an expression that seemed almost obvious. Of course I know. I was placed here by the Great One. Its voice swelled with pride. The Great One specifically ordered me to remain here and monitor the sealed being in the core. If the seal loosened and it tried to escape, I was to strike and force it back in. That way, it could. It abruptly clamped its hands over its mouth, shaking its head vigorously. Cough. Can't say any more. That's a secret. If I keep talking, the Great One will get mad. Kairos grew even more suspicious. There was clearly something far more important that it wasn't saying. But before he could shift the topic, Will suddenly reacted. The ghost world's strongest combatant had gone terrifyingly pale. Cold sweat streamed down his forehead. He muttered under his breath. No, impossible, how could this be? That was. He jerked his head up, bloodshot eyes staring at the empty corridor ahead as if trying to see through the walls. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Will roared. You're lying, right? That seal can't be broken. It was reinforced by generations of lords with their lives. Mars Haddo blinked, caught off guard by his outburst. Hey, old man, I'm telling the truth. Why would I lie? There's nothing in it for me. He's coming out, whether you accept it or not. But Will's emotions had already spiraled out of control. He couldn't listen. Or perhaps he was too afraid to believe. The seal in the ghost world's core was everything to him. It was a familiar kind of tragedy, and no less heavy for it. If the seal truly shattered, the very purpose he'd devoted his life to would shatter with it. I'm going in. I need to see it with my own eyes. His aura surged, wilder this time, edged with something close to panic. His champion-level Jengar materialized again. Sensing its trainer's near madness, it shrieked sharply, purple-black energy surging around it. Stop it! Will commanded. Jengar flashed forward as a streak of darkness toward Mars Haddo. Move aside. I'm going in. Shadow Ball. Countless purple-black orbs condensed midair and rained down on Mars Haddo. This attack was even stronger than the earlier probe. Each shadow ball carried enough force to shatter the corridor walls. Yet Mars Haddo merely sighed. Sigh, you humans are such a hassle sometimes. Its body blurred. The shadow balls passed straight through it like smoke. Will's pupils contracted. He recognized the ability that ghost types could render themselves intangible to evade attacks. But this was more than that. Like his own Jengar, it could merge with shadows. Get into the shadows and grab it. Jengar twisted and dove into the ground's shadow. The next instant, Mars Haddo's shadow churned violently. A massive purple claw burst out, lunging for its ankle. Mars Haddo didn't even move. It glanced down at the shadow, expression oddly exasperated. Playing with shadows in front of me? Seriously? The moment it spoke, the claw froze. A scream echoed from within the shadow. The world that should have allowed Jengar free movement had become a prison. No matter how it struggled, it couldn't escape, as if glued in place. What did you do? Will cried. Nothing much. Just controlled it a little. Mars Haddo shrugged. After all, shadows tend to listen to me more. It raised a finger and flicked. Bang! Jengar shot out of the shadow like a cannonball, crashing onto the ground and skidding several meters. Its glow was dim, clearly gravely injured. Kairos watched from the side, his jaw tight. He'd seen enough. All right, stop. Seriously, Mars Haddo said helplessly. I told you, I'm doing this for your own good. Going there now is meaningless except for dying. You can't even beat me. What use would it be? Will stared at his fallen Jengar as if struck by lightning. He had seen it clearly, inside the Shadow Realm, his Jengar had been utterly suppressed, like an adult crushing a chick in its grip. This was the strongest combat power of the Ghost World lineage. Since becoming Lord, he had never experienced such a defeat. And in a pure ghost-type duel, he had been crushed so effortlessly. The gap was overwhelming. Kairos had already formed his own conclusion, Will was champion tier, no question. But Mars Shadow clearly belonged to the realm of legendary Pokémon. The result wasn't surprising. Will's aura deflated. He slumped against the wall, eyes hollow. Can you calm down now? Mars Shadow floated before him. Calm down. Will's voice was hoarse, as if he had aged decades in moments. We exist to guard that seal. That's our purpose. And now you tell me he's coming out, how am I supposed to stay calm? He looked at Kairos and Mars Shadow and sighed deeply. For thousands of years, our mission has been to protect that seal. Generation after generation of lords gave their lives to strengthen it. I was ready to do the same. He took a slow breath. It's our faith. My responsibility as Lord. And now you say it's broken, that it's about to emerge, and I'm completely powerless. I don't even have the right to go see it. Kairos hadn't expected this. He'd known Will as a laid-back, even carefree lord. He hadn't imagined the weight the man carried beneath that surface, a life devoted to a single, unrelenting purpose. Mars Shadow's mocking tone faded, replaced with something more complex. As a human, you've done remarkably well. It sighed. Your strength is top tier among humans. But this matter, it truly exceeds your limits. That's not your fault. It turned to Kairos. Kairos, meanwhile, was deep in thought. The secret Mars Shadow had almost revealed, and Ho-Oh's arrangement behind it all, he needed to speak with Mars Shadow alone. Mr. Will, Kairos said gently, stepping forward. Could you give us a moment? I'd like to discuss something personal with Mars Shadow. Will paused, then nodded. In his current state, he didn't wish to remain anyway. All right. I'll go get some air. He stood unsteadily, recalled his Jengar, and walked toward the other end of the corridor. Only after his figure disappeared around the corner did Kairos turn back to Mars Shadow. Now, he said quietly, can you tell me what that secret really is? Chapter 279 Legendary Faith and a New Module Mission. Mars Shadow glanced in the direction Will had left, then waved its hand dismissively. There was really no need to make him walk that far. It lifted a hand and traced a circle in the air. A black barrier materialized instantly, enveloping Kairos and Mars Shadow within a semi-transparent bubble that sealed out all outside sound. He can't hear us from out there now. Mars Shadow clapped its hands lightly and looked at Kairos. Ask whatever you want. For the sake of that feather, I'll tell you everything I know. Kairos nodded and got straight to the point. Who exactly is sealed inside? And why did Ho-Oh arrange for you to stay here? Mars Shadow floated into a more comfortable position and began slowly. It's a long story. It narrowed its eyes, as if reaching back through centuries of memory. Before Ho-Oh disappeared, she came to me and said that deep within the core region of this ghost world, there was an extremely important fragment of a sacred relic. She asked me to retrieve it. A relic fragment? Kairos interrupted. What relic? I don't know. Mars Shadow shook its head. She didn't elaborate. She only said it was something very ancient and very powerful. I came here as ordered. But when I arrived, I found that the fragment had already been swallowed by a gigantic creature. After it entered the creature's body, the transformation was immediate and complete. Its strength surged beyond all measure. It didn't simply grow stronger. It was fundamentally remade. Its power became something bizarre, capable of distorting space and throwing the entire ghost world into chaos. At that point, I realized it had already surpassed what I could handle alone. Left unchecked, it might even break out of the ghost world and bleed into your real world. Just as I was about to call for reinforcements, Ho-Oh arrived in person. A trace of reverence entered Mars Shadow's voice. Ho-Oh fought it. That battle shook the very foundations of the ghost world. But I could tell she wasn't in good condition. Her power of faith had already grown very weak. She couldn't display her true strength. Meanwhile, that creature was fueled by the relic fragment. In the end, she couldn't completely destroy it. She could only pour every last remnant of her strength into sealing it within the core region. After sealing it, she ordered me to remain here and stand guard while she left to recover. She told me that once she regained her strength, she would return to finish it off. But... Mars Haddo sighed, its gaze dimming. I've waited until today, and she still hasn't appeared. If I hadn't sensed the aura of that feather earlier, I might have begun to fear that something had happened to her. That's why I was so emotional when I saw you. I needed to know how she was. Kairos felt as if a storm had broken loose inside his mind. The relic fragment alone was staggering. Mars Haddo didn't know what it was, but anything capable of empowering a creature to fight Ho-Oh was clearly no ordinary object, possibly the key to this entire incident. And then there was Ho-Oh's condition. The power of faith, what exactly did that mean? It took him a moment to settle his thoughts before he continued. You mentioned the power of faith, Kairos said. What is that? Mars Haddo glanced at him as though the answer were obvious. The highest tier legendary Pokémon have long surpassed the constraints of ordinary rules. Their power has sources. Ho-Oh's power comes from human faith. Simply put, the more people believe in her and revere her, the stronger she becomes. If that faith dwindles, she loses most of her strength and might become no different from an ordinary Pokémon. Kairos nodded slowly. The concept wasn't unfamiliar. It mirrored the way gods in old stories were sustained by worship. But a contradiction surfaced immediately. If Ho-Oh had been willing to help humanity, even exhausting herself to seal that creature, how could no one believe in her? According to every historical record I've found, Kairos said with a frown, there's been no trace of Ho-Oh for hundreds of years. Most people don't even know such a Pokémon exists. How do you explain that? Mars Haddo froze. It stared at him as though he had said something completely absurd. What do you mean no one believes in her? That's impossible. It spun anxiously in the air. There used to be many people who believed in Ho-Oh. Yes, the numbers declined over time, but it couldn't have reached the point where no one even knows her name. There should at least be dedicated priests and temples. The more it spoke, the more bewildered it became. Are you sure you're not mistaken? Or are your history books simply wrong? Kairos shook his head. His memory was reliable, and the records had been unambiguous. In this world's history, Ho-Oh was an obscure name at best, faint echoes in a handful of ancient legends, with no trace of widespread worship. A possibility surfaced in his mind, sharp and cold. He looked up at Mars Haddo. Let me ask you something. In your world, the place you came from, how strong were the strongest humans? How many regions were there? Were other legendary Pokémon worshipped as well? Mars Haddo didn't understand why he was asking, but answered honestly. The strongest humans? Some probably reached a level comparable to legendary tier Pokémon, though certainly not on Ho-Oh's level. Around my level, roughly speaking. It held up 3 fingers. As for regions, 9, of course. Isn't that common knowledge? And yes, other legendary Pokémon are worshipped as well. Logia, Kyogre, many of them have devoted followers. That's part of why Ho-Oh's faith declined so quickly. People's devotion is divided, after all. 9 regions. The pieces clicked into place all at once. In this world, only 5 major regions were widely known. Humanity's peak combat strength was formidable, but nowhere near legendary tier. Most legendary Pokémon lived in complete seclusion, with no organized worship to speak of. And the history Mars Haddo described bore no resemblance to anything on record. Ho-Oh's feather existed here, yet Ho-Oh herself had vanished centuries ago. Mars Haddo's memories conflicted entirely with recorded history. Even basic geography didn't align. There was only one explanation. Mars Haddo and Ho-Oh were not Pokémon of this world. They had come from a parallel world. That would explain Ho-Oh's sudden disappearance, why no one knew of her existence. She had likely been injured, or crossed worlds by accident, and stripped of her faith, her strength had collapsed. She had spent what little remained sealing that creature within this world's ghost world. Mars Haddo must have crossed later, searching for her. The thought made Kairos's scalp prickle. He didn't know much about parallel worlds. It was only through the interdimensional communicator that he'd even learned the concept existed. But this much was clear, whether or not a mission appeared, this was something he had to get involved in. What's the current condition of the one sealed inside? He asked. How much time do we have? Mars Haddo steadied itself and pressed a finger to its chin. The seal is weakening. Its strength is recovering at a terrifying rate. If my senses are correct, about 2 weeks. After that, the seal will shatter completely, and it will resurface in the ghost world. 2 weeks. That matched the system countdown exactly. The mission's time limit wasn't arbitrary, it was anchored to the seal's collapse. The seal has been loosening for a while, Mars Haddo continued. You humans just can't perceive it. Those black mists you've been seeing, that's the source. Power leaking from it. What you've been calling the ghost tide. Everything clicked. That was the origin of the ghost tide. He had sensed something wrong with that black mist from the beginning. It wasn't ordinary ghost-type energy, and it wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was the sealed creature's leaked power bleeding outward. No wonder Will had said the mist was thickening and couldn't be dispersed. The source itself was the problem. Still, a new question rose to the surface. If the creature was this powerful, what about Ho-Oh? Would she return to face her old enemy? Mars Shadow's expression dimmed at the mention of her name. She was supposed to. That was always the plan. Once she recovered, she would return and eliminate it completely. But I've lost contact with her for a long time now. It paused. At this point, she probably won't appear. We'll have to find a solution ourselves. That wasn't good news. So what do we do? Kairos pressed. If we can't defeat it and Ho-Oh isn't coming back, is there another option? We can't simply wait for the seal to break. Mars Haddo spread its hands. To be honest, no. Its strength is too terrifying. It fused with the relic fragment and has been absorbing ghost world energy for centuries. I can't defeat it. Neither can you humans. Even that man from earlier would be nothing more than a casualty. It paused. However, while we can't eliminate it, we might be able to slow the rate at which the seal breaks. If we can buy enough time, perhaps a turning point will come. Delay. Kairos stroked his chin. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it was a foothold. Just then, a familiar electronic chime rang through his mind. A system notification appeared. He focused on the golden text floating in his vision. Ding! Key story node detected. New mission triggered. Mission objective: help any one legendary Pokémon obtain any amount of faith power. Mission reward: unlock new module, Legendary Faith. A new module. His eyes sharpened. Every module unlocked so far had brought sweeping changes to his game development, some had even shaped reality directly, like the Pokédex for Divine Beasts or the reward draw system. Legendary Faith clearly connected to legendary Pokémon in some meaningful way. But he forced himself to stay grounded. Even if the module unlocked immediately, that was a future problem. The threat inside the ghost world was real, and it would break free in 2 weeks. A mysterious new module alone wasn't going to resolve the immediate crisis. He turned his focus back to the mission itself. Strengthen the ghost world faction, or grow strong enough himself to resolve the problem directly. Neither was going to be easy. Chapter 280 Me? Are you serious? Increase their strength? Could that actually work? He still didn't know what level of creature was lurking in the ghost world. Even Mars Haddo, a mythical Pokémon, and Ho-Oh, a legendary existence, had been no match for it. In just 2 short weeks, no matter how desperately they trained, themselves and their Pokémon alike, there was no way they could beat something like that. This wasn't a matter of levels. It was a difference in power on an entirely different plane. It would be like sending a freshly hatched Beautifly to fight Palkia, a god-tier Pokémon. Training for 100 years would not change a thing. Kairos shook his head. He had a feeling the system meant something different from what he was imagining. After a moment's thought, he made up his mind. No matter what, he had to enter the seal and see the situation at the center for himself before making any plans. Just listening to Mars Shadow's account was not giving him a real sense of what they were dealing with. Only by seeing it with his own eyes could he judge whether there was any chance of solving this. With his mind made up, Kairos pushed the system interface aside and turned his attention back to Mars Haddo. The mythical Pokémon was hovering in place, staring into the depths of the passage with a look of deep worry. Watching it, Kairos got a rough read on the situation. Even though Mars Haddo was saying there was nothing to be done, it clearly had not given up. Otherwise it would have slipped away long ago. There was no reason for it to have waited this long, and certainly no reason to tell him any of this. If that was the case, there was still room to negotiate. Kairos cleared his throat and broke the silence. So, from what you were saying, you want us to run. Mars Haddo snapped out of its thoughts and gave a nod. That's right. It's the safest option. That thing is powerful, but it can only push into the real world so fast. As long as you move quickly and keep your distance from the ghost world, it will not be able to touch you for a good while. You would be safe, at least in the short term. It let out a sigh. Not that there's much of a choice. Our strength just is not there. But Kairos shook his head. I'm not running. I still want to see if there's some way to deal with this. Because if things really spiral out of control, the entire world suffers, and I will not be able to run from that either. Mars Haddo stared at him, clearly not expecting that answer. It looked Kairos up and down, and something like admiration flickered in its gaze. True to form for someone the boss recognized with a feather. You've got guts. But there really is not a good solution right now, and there is only so much I can do. Since the conversation had gotten this far, Kairos saw no reason to hold back. Actually, it's not like there's nothing we can do. He looked at Mars Haddo and gave a small shrug. Let me be up front. I can help Ho-Oh recover its faith energy. The moment those words left his mouth, Mars Haddo lit up. Its whole body seemed to spark to life. It shot forward and hovered right in front of Kairos, its red eyes boring into him like it was trying to see straight through to his soul. What did you say? You can restore Ho-Oh's faith energy. Its voice had gone slightly pitchy, it was clearly stunned. How is that even possible? Faith energy only builds through the sincere prayers and devotion of countless people. Ho-Oh has been gone for hundreds of years. That connection was severed long ago. How could one person possibly pull that off? It spun several agitated circles in the air. But if you really could do it, that would be incredible. With faith energy, I would be able to sense Ho-Oh's location, and Ho-Oh's power would be restored. If there had been enough faith energy back then, Ho-Oh would not have just sealed that thing away. It could have wiped it out entirely. Then Mars Haddo stopped short, like a thought had just hit it. The light in its eyes dimmed. It turned and gave Kairos a suspicious look. But did you mean that? This is not something to joke about. Faith energy does not come from saying the right words. Tell me, how exactly do you plan to pull this off? Kairos had fully expected this reaction. Faith energy did sound like something out of a legend, and getting it was extraordinarily hard. In this world, people had long since forgotten Ho-Oh even existed. Rebuilding that faith from scratch would be next to impossible. But he had his game. Using the game to let people learn about Ho-Oh, to get them to believe in it, would not be so difficult at all. Though there was no point explaining that to Mars Haddo right now. It would not have any idea what game development even meant. Kairos smiled, his confidence plain to see. I have my ways. But before that, since I have already promised to help Ho-Oh, could you do something for me in return? Mars Haddo studied that confident expression for a moment. It still had doubts, but thinking about the Ho-Oh feather in his possession, it ultimately chose to trust him. The fact that he carried Ho-Oh's feather meant he would not lie. Everything he said was the truth. Otherwise, Mars Haddo would never believe a person was capable of something like this. Of course. Mars Haddo dipped its head. As long as you can restore Ho-Oh's faith energy, I will do whatever you ask. Go ahead, what do you need? Kairos pointed toward the darkness deep in the passage. Simple. Guide us. If we are going to solve this problem, we need to understand what we are actually dealing with. I want to go into the depths of the ghost world and see the situation for myself, take a look at what has happened to that seal with my own eyes. Mars Haddo hesitated. Go inside? It is dangerous in there. The seal has not broken yet, but even the energy leaking out is enough to make things deeply unpleasant. Kairos watched Mars Haddo waver, but felt no concern. Having decided to get involved in this, there was no reason to back out halfway. He nodded, his tone firm. I'm sure. Mars Haddo looked at him, and something helpless crossed its features. A complicated emotion moved through those red eyes, something that seemed like resignation at this human stubbornness, and something else that looked almost like admiration for his nerve. Fine. If you are that set on it, there is nothing more I can say. It exhaled slowly and shifted its position in the air, like it was bracing itself. But let me be clear, it really is dangerous in there. The seal has not broken, but the energy leaking out is already terrifying. I will wrap a protective barrier around both of you. That barrier has a time limit, though, and I cannot hold it for long, so we will need to move fast. It paused, then kept going. Also, once we are inside, stay sharp. Do not wander off under any circumstances. No matter what you see or hear, keep quiet. And return all your Pokémon to their Pokeballs, they will be safest in there. The environment is too harsh. Having them out will only make things harder. Kairos paused at that. Return his Pokémon? That was a tough condition. In a place this dangerous, pulling his Pokémon back meant losing his most immediate protection. If something sudden happened, even his reaction time would suffer. But thinking it through, Marshadow was only looking out for them. If something even a mythical Pokémon found brutal, it was clearly no joke. Better to keep the Pokémon safe inside their Pokeballs than put them through that. It was actually the smarter call. He nodded. But just as he reached for the Pokeballs at his waist, a thought struck him and his hand stilled. He looked up at Marshadow. Can I bring Will along? Marshadow blinked, clearly not expecting that at a moment like this. It glanced over at the man still standing in the distance, lost in his own thoughts, then looked back at Kairos with curiosity. You want to bring him too? That guy has decent enough strength, but in a fight at this level, like I said, he would just slow us down. Taking him only adds to the risk. What are you thinking? Kairos gave a small smile and did not get into the details. He's the domain master here. This situation involves him no matter how you look at it. And we might need his knowledge of this place to track down certain clues. Leaving him alone out here is not exactly safe either. If something goes wrong with the seal, he is actually more vulnerable on the outside. That was an excuse, of course. The real reason was that Will, while not particularly powerful, seemed like a decent person, and he knew the ghost world inside and out. More hands meant more options. If they ran into something they could not handle on their own, having a local around would not hurt. Marshadow stared at Kairos for a few seconds, like it was sizing up his sincerity. Then, after a moment, it let out a small laugh that carried a note of appreciation. You're loyal, I'll give you that. All right, one more person is one more person. My barrier can stretch to cover two just as easily. Consider this a favor for your willingness to help Ho-Oh. I would not bother otherwise. With that settled, Kairos wasted no more time. The two of them stepped out of the barrier and reappeared at the entrance to the passage. Will's expression was still unsettled, his feelings clearly complicated. He had been watching from a distance the whole time, one hand gripping his Pokeball handle so tightly his knuckles had gone pale. The moment he saw Kairos reappear, he started to say something, his mouth already half open, but he had not quite managed to get a word out. Kairos walked over and met his eyes. We are planning to go into the depths of the ghost world together, to see what is actually happening with that seal. Do you want to come? Will looked completely thrown. He stared at Kairos with a blank expression, like someone who had just been told a ghost story. Just moments ago, that Pokémon had refused to let any of them through. The sheer force of its resolve had been a wall he could not get past. He had been close to giving up. This passage was the only route to the ghost world's core, and with a Pokémon that powerful blocking the way, he had no way through. After the battle earlier, he had felt firsthand exactly how overwhelming that power was. That level of strength was simply beyond what an ordinary person could go up against. And yet now, somehow, its whole attitude had done a complete 180. It was saying they could go in? What in the world had happened between them? Will's mind was struggling to process it, stuck in a kind of dazed loop. He stood there for a long moment before Kairos's words actually registered. Come along? How was that possible? He stared at Kairos, disbelief written all over his face. Then it clicked. It must have been whatever Kairos said during that conversation. This mysterious Pokémon seemed to treat Kairos with a kind of particular deference, almost something close to caution. What could he have possibly said to cause such a dramatic shift? Will was burning with curiosity, but he knew this was not the moment to ask. If there was a chance to go in, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. There was no way he was passing it up. He drew a slow breath, steadied himself, and leaned toward Kairos, keeping his voice low. Kairos, how did you manage that? It was ready to fight us a minute ago. How did it suddenly agree to let us in? Kairos glanced at him. Nothing much. Just agreed to do something for it. He did not elaborate, giving only a vague answer before moving on. Will still had plenty of questions, but he could tell Kairos did not want to go into it, so he let it go. He simply gave Kairos a long, quiet look. Thank you. Kairos clapped him on the shoulder, signaling him not to overthink it. All right, enough standing around, let's move. Will laughed softly, nodded, and fell into step behind Kairos. Mars Haddo drifted ahead of them. It glanced back at the two humans, confirmed they were ready, then turned and flew toward the darkness at the far end of the passage. Stay close. Do not fall behind. It issued the reminder, and then a faint green glow began to radiate from its body. The light was not harsh at all. It gave off a remarkably gentle quality. As the glow spread outward, a translucent green barrier formed in an instant, enclosing both Kairos and Will within it. Under the protection of the barrier, the suffocating pressure that had hung over the area lifted considerably. Kairos felt his whole body go lighter, that heavy, oppressive weight was gone. It was right at that moment that the shadow at his feet gave a sudden rippling twitch. A purple Pokémon with red eyes pushed half its body up out of the shadow. Gengar. It had apparently sensed that this energy was something out of the ordinary. It blinked its big eyes curiously and glanced around. Kairos looked down at it. This one had always loved hiding in shadows, and had already shown a knack for it before. Maybe it could learn something from watching this. He crouched down and pointed at the glow radiating from Mars Haddo, speaking quietly to Gengar. Pay close attention to that kind of power. Work toward making your own shadow abilities something like that someday. Gengar blinked at him, caught off guard. It tilted its head, staring at that mysterious, powerful green glow, an energy it could not even begin to wrap its head around. Then it looked down at Kairos's shadow, reinforced by its own power, which looked more or less the same as always. Me? Learn that? Are you serious right now?
Additionally, if you would like to request novels and access my Google Drive where I have 200+ audiobooks, then you can join my Patreon. Link is also provided in the description.